Well, good evening, Placerville. Thank you for showing up on this rainy March 13th evening. We appreciate you being with us, and we appreciate the rain. So with that, I'd like to call this meeting to order and invite you to rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is also my extreme pleasure to welcome Councilmember Wilkins back. We're delighted to have you back with us this evening. So, with that, may we have the roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Acuna?
Here.
Councilmember Borelli?
Here.
Councilmember Clarici?
Here.
Mayor Thomas?
Here.
I did that last time.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Here. Great. All right. We're on number 3, announcements and presentations to the public. Brief comments by the City Council. And I will start on my right. Vice Mayor Acuna?
I thought maybe Tricia would like to say a few words. Let me thank you for the opportunity, Madam Mayor. I want to thank Veerkamp General Engineering for their recent donation of 2 men and equipment to the Goldbug Park gold panning trough replacement project. We were able to get that work taken care of, and the Boy Scouts got out there last weekend, did what they needed to do, and the display is almost back together again. So without Mr. Veerkamp's generosity to the community, that opportunity would have been much more difficult to get done, and we are going to have a much better display out at the park. So thank him, and thank the Eagle Scouts that are also making that happen.
Nice.
And thank you, Mark, for your
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Because I know you dictate a lot. You kind of get all these things.
That's not saying he's a
Ask
dictator, is he?
nicely.
No, he's not a dictator. He just dictates.
Okay, that's different.
Things that need to be done. He
Good.
sees it and
Yes, he does.
kind of makes it happen.
Yes,
so.
he does.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, the couple of things I did, and I think John will probably talk about this more, was we had the League of Cities up here. So, no, I'm going to pass it on to you, but I just want to say fine job, and I think it was well received, and all the folks that came, I think they were really impressed with our little city, and are probably looking forward to coming back.
It was a fun day.
Oh, I hope
Yeah.
so.
And then the other thing, I attended the El Dorado County Business Showcase that's sponsored by the Chamber and the Film Commission in Placerville, and I'm going to tell you, that was so well attended. I talked to Laurel Brentbaum near the end, and I said, my gosh, you had a lot of people here, and she said she thinks there were around 3,000. So those were, and I went in the organ room. They always have a noted speaker, and this time it was pretty timely because of the movie Lady Bird that was pretty much filmed in Sacramento, and so the speaker was the lady that did the casting for it, and it was really interesting to hear how they go about and what they do. And she was mostly concentrating on how she had achieved the level where she is, but her more than and then Mark, Channel 10, Mark.
Finally?
Yes, he was the master of ceremonies, and of course he does a great job too. And the message that they got was, and the whole audience was, because they always go around and introduce everybody. There were so many people there that listed their occupation as actor and anything to do with the film industry, and practically the whole room was made up of them. And but the main message was, you don't have to go to LA. We've got a lot to offer right here. So it was like I say, that was also well received. So
It was a nice event. It was
It
packed.
was
Yeah,
great.
It was. Councilmember Clarici.
Okay. We hosted the Sacramento Valley Division of the League of California Cities, so it was a lot of cities from kind of just north of Sacramento all the way up, Roseville included. And we hosted the divisional meeting, the quarterly meeting. So we had it here in town. Jose Rodriguez opened up the California Kitchen for us, and he actually catered it for us down at his place because the folks that were coming wanted to be on Main Street, but Main Street on a Friday night is far too busy. And so we actually went to Jose, and he opened up his restaurant, which was very nice, and the food was excellent, as always. And so we did that, and one of the things we did is sort of as a fun thing was we provided some walking tours of Placerville. So folks from the museum, some docents from the museum took some groups around, and we walked with a couple of them, and they just absolutely loved it. They folks were just so tickled with our beautiful town here, and they got to learn some of our history. And the way it was one of those weird days where it like rained a lot before and it rained a lot after, but right when we were there, it was cloudy, but it didn't rain, so that was good. So the city just showed off real well, and the people were very pleasant, and they learned a lot. And just not to get too far into the weeds, but the two items we talked about were public employee retirement system. So there was a member from PERS there, and some of the challenges facing with us with that particular issue, which we will be talking more about probably when we do our budget workshops and our budget hearings. I invite all of you to come to our budget workshops. If you have a better way to do things or have some ideas on how we could save money, we certainly want to hear from all of you. So, and then the other thing, Mayor Thomas did an excellent presentation on some efforts around homelessness and the Hangtown Haven, and using that as a case example of something that was tried and some of the lessons learned, and we had a nice discussion around that as well. So the city just looked great. Everybody here was great, and I know the people that came from all sorts of different parts of Northern California too really enjoyed coming here, and so it was just a good
They
thing.
all wanted it to snow. and
They
we
wanted
were
it to snow, and actually it was funny. After we finished up about 7 o'clock, and as I was driving up, I got in my car. It was starting to sleet a little bit, and then when I was driving up Cedar Ravine towards Country Club, it kind of started to snow, and then it was snowing up at my house. So it's amazing what a couple 100 feet will do in terms of the snow. But anyway, it was a good time. I would also like to apologize. At the last meeting, I made some comments about Clay Street. I don't apologize about making comments about Clay Street, but I went on far too long. And I spoke with some people in the community afterwards, and they told me, you went on far too long. And so I just apologize for going on far too long. I stick by my points, but I went on far too long. So anyway, I want to apologize
Are you done?
for that.
Okay. Are you through?
Are you done
Sorry.
now?
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Councilmember Wilkins.
No.
Nope. All right. And I just have a few things. First of all, I'm happy to announce that we have a new planning commissioner, and he's sitting in the front row, and that's Ted Juba. Okay, great. We're delighted to have you here with us and representing the city on the Planning Commission. Appreciate your interest in our city and willingness to serve. Also, I would like to point out some fabulous new diagrams that we have around Town Hall that our staff has put up for you for your reference in the future as you look at some of the projects. There's a lot going on in town. On the back wall, there's a project diagram of the Western Placerville Interchange, the next phase of the project for your close-up reference. On the left over there, there's some colorful renderings of conceptual renderings of the Clay Street project and what it may look like from the different vantage points. Now, do keep in mind, those are not, they don't have any design features on them, but just for your reference. And then behind our staff over here, this is fascinating. It shows all of the different projects that are going on in town. The CIP projects, Measure H and L projects, road projects, sewer projects. You look at that, there's a lot going on in our little city, and it shows you how busy our staff is maintaining our city and keeping her safe and secure. So that's appreciate our staff getting that up and helpful references for all of us. Also, want to reiterate that we are super excited that Amgen is coming to Placerville on May 18th. And there is a lot of excitement and a convergence of activity and support around this event. The Placerville Downtown Association is busy at work to determine events prior to the race that community members can engage in. We've been engaging with the schools and have commitments from Schnell School and Sierra School to take part in this.
In high school?
In high school? Oh, wonderful, fabulous. Not only are Sierra and Schnell School going to be down here and witness the race and be a part of welcoming the bicycles in an exciting way to our city, but they're going to be bringing curriculum into their schools via art projects and math projects and reading projects leading up to the race. So that's really fabulous. So just a whole convergence of activity. It's going to be a good time in Placerville for Amgen, and they're going to be real pleased they're
All
here.
12 minutes.
That's right. We're gonna put on a really big show. So anyway, so with that, We are on to item 3.2, receive and file status update for the Clay Street Hangtown Creek Bridge Replacement Project. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is just informational. We provided copies of all this information in your packet, but also on the back table, there's this information. 3 attachments, the frequently asked questions, some information we put together regarding that. A schedule or project milestones that we're looking at for the project. You'll notice some of those are not listed an actual date because they'll be determined, those dates, as we move forward. And then just a project update. These project updates will be coming out periodically. As we get further along and have more information happening, they'll come more frequently. Right now, as we're in the EIR process, there won't be a lot of new information happening until we get to the end of that. So I just want to make the public aware of that and also announce for information, and it's in this information also, April 4th, we will be holding an open house here at Town Hall, 6 o'clock in the evening, regarding the EIR, the draft EIR. And our staff will be here to answer questions regarding the EIR and the process that we'll be going through. So that's it.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'd like to thank our staff for putting this information together. It's kind of a complicated process, and really appreciate you helping us and the public understand the process and work through it. And so really appreciate this information.
I just kind of wanted to say the same thing. This was great. It's so concise, but yet it's so informative. I think everything we want to know, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Any other council member comments? No? Is there any public comment on this? Come forward and please state your name for the record. Speakers have 3. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. Good
Thank you.
evening.
Good evening, Mayor Thomas and council members. I want to thank you for this. It's much welcomed information. I can tell you that there have been large numbers of people who for months have been surprised, almost flabbergasted, that every time they've asked about this project, they were told, no, nothing is planned to discuss this project. So during the comment period. So it's very good news and welcomed news. Likewise, people like Jennifer Chapman have been putting out for a couple months now status updates on the project with all kinds of information that's very useful in a very readable fashion. So it's good to see that this is done. Even if it's just a couple weeks before the expiration of that 45-day comment period, it gives us much more time than we had with the courthouse project, and this is just very welcome. So I'd also add for your information that the day before before this happened on March 8th, I came to this office to reserve the room, the Purity Building, for March 24th. We'll have a workshop on how to use CEQA and NEPA. It doesn't matter if you think this project is the best thing to hit Placerville in 50 years, or whether you have some reservations. Everyone needs to know about NEPA and CEQA, and frankly, I don't. So we have a couple experts from different persuasions on this one project, because we all as adults learn much better when we have an actual sample to go along. And if you get a copy of that, whether it's digital or the hard copy, about what, 1.5 inches thick, it's really difficult to get through. So the purpose of this workshop on the 24th, started about 10 o'clock, open to everyone, is to help give useful information for a 2-hour period and then go out and take a look. So the idea is that by the time it's over, your confidence in how to understand this law, those crazy 4 letters that we hear about all the time but don't understand, will be much more clear, and hopefully add your self-confidence about it. Because I can tell you that I have learned very little and always through the hard way. So that's the purpose of this, and hopefully it'll be very useful and helpful. We'll give you more details as time comes and look for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening, Council. Michael Drobish, Placerville. For either the open house, the city's open house, or Kirk's meeting, would it be possible to get permission to, again, chalk, depending on the rain, to mark out these renderings across the parking lot for people to get a visual idea of dimension, location, all of that?
We'll
I think
get that
people
answer, yeah.
are very visual. That would help, and it wouldn't be a big impact. And then also, the documents are at home, but it was like 2014, 2015. City Council did a resolution, basically the notice of intent to start the project. You had 5 choices to choose from, which included keeping the alignment of the project roughly the way it is, up to a four-way stop, a four-way signal, moving the monument, not moving the Druids monument. And I believe the council chose 2D, which was a four-way realignment, not move the Druid monument. But most of the EIR documents are showing movement of the monument. So how did we go from city council 2D approval, four-way intersection, don't move the monument, to four-way intersection, move the monument? Just
Okay.
honest question.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else? All right, I'll close public comment on this item and bring it back to staff to answer those questions. So, Pierre, I guess I'll direct this to you. And question about, is it possible to mark the renderings, or, mark the project on the street, and comments on how did we get to the options that we see in the draft EIR today?
Yeah, as far as using some kind of a chalk or marker, pending our weather, that is something that staff can do. We did that before. I'm trying to remember, I believe it was during maybe the notice of preparation meeting, and a group of us walked over with the general public, and we actually outlined where the street was go. That was in 2016. And we outlined where the new alignment of Clay Street was to intersect with Cedar Ravine. And then the second question was,
How did
Mayor?
we get to the options as displayed in the draft EIR today versus what was supposedly approved by the council at the last go-around?
Oh, I'll try
far
and
as
take a
options.
shot at that, and our city engineer, Rebecca Neves, can chime in, probably give a little more detail. But in general, when the council chose 2D, and that was basically to have the four-way intersection with the Druid Monument remaining, if you recall, there were a number of different options. One was the roundabout option, of course, that we're not considering, but that would have maintained the Druid Monument in pretty close to the same place. We had other options where the Druid Monument was going to be relocated from the intersection to the west portion of the bifurcated parking lot. But with the new reconfigured or redesigned intersection, the Druid Monument would be moved. It would remain in the intersection, but as I believe it's going to be moved approximately 40 feet from where it currently stands, approximately to the west, so that it's not so it doesn't become a traffic hazard.
But it's still in the intersection.
But it's still in the intersection. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, could I add to that too? I want to stress, though, none of those decisions are set in stone. We have not made a decision on any of that. And if we do mark the parking lot, we need to emphasize that's not necessarily what the project will be. In fact, I can almost guarantee you there will be some changes to that when we go through the design and et cetera. We can do that, as we've stressed. I think it's in the frequently asked questions that we put out that are on the back table. That's the maximum impact that we are studying in the EIR, so we had to go to that maximum. It can be smaller than that, it can't be bigger than that.
Right.
So that's why we had to do that. So I want to just emphasize that relating to what council did back in 2015 to select option 2D. I'd have to go back and look why that was, what happened during that time. I think it was related to getting rid of the roundabout, if I remember right. But the important factor is that none of that has been decided because we don't know what all the impacts are until we finalize the EIR.
Great.
And all of that can change what our final decision is.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. Have anything else, staff to add?
I did want to add one of the reasons why we are looking at relocating the monument within the intersection actually had to do with traffic circulation and truck turn templates. When you lay out an intersection for safety, you want to consider all truck turning radiuses, and with Cedar Ravine being a direct access to the hospital, their emergency vehicle access, it actually wouldn't even, the current configuration has a pretty hard time with the fire trucks as it is. So that was one thing that we were looking at for consideration.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Madam Mayor, if I could
Yes.
comment. I appreciate staff's willingness to go ahead and mark out some dimensions out there on site, but given where we're at, and staff has made it very clear that we are not to be in any sort of a presumptive state with anything that we discuss, to allow that all the options, including a no-build option, remain equal and have equal opportunity for review and study by the public. As Mr. Smith just mentioned earlier, he finds the process quite confusing and is looking forward to a workshop. And I would suggest that if we started marking out there on the site, that those dimensions would suddenly become, pardon the pun, set in stone, and then we would be doing all kinds of information correcting to make it what it really is a building envelope, and the project goes inside that, if a project even occurs. I remember when we did that, and we played catch up on that for a long time. I mean, it went. It was all over the community. Well, that's what the bridge is going to be. The famous 46 feet again, for example. It grows. It's a nice effort, but it grows legs, and then becomes very detrimental to a fair and open process.
So it might make sense that, like the idea of the renderings, but once the draft EIR process is completed and a project identified, because we've not identified a project yet, and that's what this process is all about.
Exactly.
And then when and if that occurs, the EIR is approved, we then move into the design phase. It would be appropriate at that point in our community meetings, looking at the features of that intersection, to then at that point have the renderings, go out and look at the site, and then determine the design features of that intersection based on the project that is identified through the EIR process. Does that make sense?
That's accurate.
Okay, great. Well, we will look forward to that process. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we have no closed session report tonight. And we have the adoption of the agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Ceremonial matters. Now, it is my great pleasure to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Eschaton. Eschaton is such an important asset and feature to our community, and it is an absolute privilege to acknowledge their presence in our town and to celebrate their long-term success. So at this point, I'd like to welcome Evelyn McGrath and invite you to come to the podium, and would like to read a proclamation in honor of your birthday. Well, not your birthday, but Eschaton's birthday. All right. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Placerville declaring March 2018 as the 50th anniversary of Eschaton. Whereas in March 2018, Eschaton celebrates its 50th anniversary in transforming the aging experience. Serving roughly 12,000 individuals each year, Eschaton remains a leader in innovative senior living, making it the largest nonprofit organization to offer creative housing options and support to seniors in the greater Sacramento area. And whereas Eschaton Village Placerville is a 63-acre campus in the heart of Placerville, from luxurious single-family homes to charming rental cottages centered around a community space, from patio homes to assisted living and memory care units, Eschaton Village offers a diverse range of housing options with a focus on the art of living. And whereas Eschaton Village is a valued and important part of Placerville, not only for their dedication to their residents, but also for their ongoing commitment to the community at large. Now therefore I, Wendy Thomas, Mayor of the City of Placerville, do hereby proclaim March 2018 as the 50th anniversary of Eschaton, and the City of Placerville joins me in celebrating this momentous occasion. So,
Thank you.
it will be my privilege to be at your celebration next Monday. At that point, I'll present a hard copy of the proclamation to you. But we're delighted to have you with us tonight. And would you like to say a few words, Evelyn?
Sure. On behalf of Eschaton, we are grateful that we are able to serve the residents of Placerville and be part of El Dorado County.
We're so glad you're here. You're such an important community asset. Any council members have any comments?
It's very nice up there. I drove some folks. My brother came to town not too long ago, and we were just driving. And I said, he goes, "What's up there?" And I said, "Oh, that's Eschaton. Let's go up there." And he goes, "Wow, this is really nice." So, yeah, it's a cool thing we have in our community.
It really is. Great.
I think I need to come up there. I always love their parties, and the last one we went to was the little lady that what's her name that celebrated her?
Mabel.
Mabel, she's amazing. Yes.
You always have the best parties up there. So.
Yes, we do.
Well, there'll be another party on Monday. So thank you for being here, and congratulations. All right. And with that, we are on public comment. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on our agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Please come to the podium and if you'd like, state your name for the record so we can mark your comments. And you have 3 minutes. And basically, obey the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So, thanks for coming here, and you're welcome. The microphone is yours. I know someone wants to speak on this rainy night. All right, come on down.
This isn't even why I came here.
Well, we're glad you're here.
My name's Mike Butterfield. You might remember me, maybe
I do.
not. Probably don't want to. But I asked a question about the bottom part of Maureen Drive the last time I was here, and it was like 12, 15 years ago. That was supposed to be blocked off. Why didn't the city do it? Nobody's gotten back to me. How come the road was not cut back through, down, up on the top area, wherever it was planned, I don't know, back down to Mosquito like it was supposed to be done? I'd really like to have an answer on that because, I mean, like I say, when it comes time for everybody to come home or go to work, it's like an expressway out there. I mean, you can put your little car counter across the road or whatever, and sure, the road can handle it and all that, but it's just, you can't get out there. I've had people almost get run over out there. It's just the way it is, the way the road is. Also, I'd like to know, I know it's not the right season to do this, when are we going to start fixing Pacific and some of these other hills around here, some of these other roads that really need it? Mosquito's terrible. Ever since EID put in their parking lot up there, that road was perfect. It had just been gone over, just topped, surfaced. It was beautiful. They came out and tore the whole damn thing up and then left it like it is now. I sure would like to have that fixed. I've been a few times, I wasn't sure my truck was going to be able to climb out of some of those holes that have been around here. You can't go up Pacific, I know that, without bouncing. I try to go over to the side if there's no cars there. Going to be a lot of front ends needing to be realigned. Where do we send the bill? You guys?
We'll get you those
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah.
We'll get you those answers.
And also, when I mentioned the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit last time I was here, Wendy, you kind of ducked down there. I don't know if you dropped your hand sandwich or if I just kind of it really bothered you or something like that about that 15-mile-an-hour thing, because it's like you ducked in under there. But I would like to have 15 miles an hour, especially on that curve coming onto Maureen.
Oh, on Maureen.
Yeah,
Okay.
onto Maureen. I really would. And I would like to have that as a part of that straightaway up there, because everybody thinks it's a drag strip. And, well, not everybody. I'm over-exaggerating, but a lot of people think it's a drag strip.
Okay.
So I'd like to really get that kind of controlled if we can. I really would appreciate it.
We'll get you some answers. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Butterfield.
thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the council?
Good evening. Perhaps some speed enforcement, once or twice a month would get some people back online through there. That is a dangerous stretch. Very narrow, parked cars, kids. It's very, very bad. So at a minimum, put the speed card out there and hopefully write a couple tickets, and you should be good for a while. A question on, previously the council voted $7,000 to put on a goal-setting workshop for city council. Is that going to be open to the public, or is that a closed city council only
Nope,
meeting?
it's open to the public.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely.
And when will we find out times and dates, locations?
When we do. We'll get you that answered. Anyone else? Yeah. Time. We'll
Good
get that.
evening, Kirk Smith. Mayor Thomas, a few moments ago, you read the guidelines for comments. It's done every time we're here. You point out that there's to be no personal attacks. It's also stated that there's no one to be defamed, as in to hold up to public shame, ridicule, or embarrassment, or as Mayor Clarici wisely said, that old golden rule thing. But one of the concerns is that it often happens the other way around. We see people up at your dais make comments about members of the public, and there's no opportunity to respond. Very personal comments. I'm just going to cite 2 sessions ago. Just as an example, a comment is made that Sue Taylor's comments were not correct, quote, and she's often not correct, close quote. At that point, she'd left the room. She wasn't able to comment. In the same meeting, I expressed understandable, I thought, concern and surprise about the sewer regulations that had dramatic impact for us and a whole bunch of people in town, and said that this was not uncommon, that notice is just not always adequate, and cited the example of the parking regulations. And then, boy, did I get whacked. And I don't mind, but there was no chance to respond. So a couple understandably expressed their outrage because they had gone courageously to Main Street in September and invited people door to door to come to discuss parking regulations. What I would have added is, so what? That's September. That's 9 months after the stuff hit the streets. The regulations were announced to consumers, the merchants of Main Street, in the January meeting of the PDA. And that one-page agenda with all kinds of print on it had 2 words: parking update, 5 minutes. Now here's $1,000 cash to any one of you who can read the parking regulations in 5 minutes. Trust me, it's 10 or 15. You can't do it. And on top of that, have 5 minutes to discuss it. They were not sent out in advance. They were not emailed. And the email that did go out, or the agenda, didn't reach most people because the list wasn't accurate. So that's when the regulations went out to people on Main Street, where they would have had a chance to be able to discuss it. 5 minutes, parking update. Nothing that said that that 5 minutes were the biggest changes in parking regulations since I was told something like 2006. So it really wasn't so unreasonable presented. I'm just saying, if you're going to have mentioning people by name, just give us a chance. It might help clear the record, and that just seems like a useful thing for all of us to do. That's the only suggestion. Because in the case of the sewer lines, that was described as, it de minimisly only affects maybe 80 sewer lines or so. Well, the one sewer line I learned about that needs replacement, that our family has property on, and learned about it just 2 hours before the meeting, covers about 1,400 feet and does have to be replaced. And I don't mind the law being done, but it would cost about $250,000. Now so we're not talking about 80 lines alone. We're talking about 10 families served by that one line. And if there's 3 or 4 families on that line and they cost a whole bunch of money, and by the way, when a contractor gives you an estimate, my experience is it's a lot more. So that really was a significant thing, and there was a reason to be concerned about it. We all make mistakes. I demonstrate that as last time when I incorrectly attributed to Mr. Clarici a position had been taken by the city manager on his own, and then a couple of years ago I misstated a vote count and corrected it the following meeting. But that's why it's probably important to hear from us sometime, because every once in a while we get it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening, Sue.
Good evening. Sue Rodman, draftee into the Parking Commission, or the Parking Committee. And I'm wondering, when are all those signs that we work so hard on actually going to get made and put up?
Okay. We'll get that answered. Thank you. All right. We'll close public comment and get you some answers. So let's see. Let's start with Mr. Butterfield and the concerns of Maureen Drive. Any comments on either the ability to get a speed trailer out there and do some parking enforcement measures on there? It's probably the police department, and also issues with the road on Maureen Drive. Get his answers.
Yeah, staff could answer that. Basically, staff would like to encourage Mr. Butterfield to actually make an appointment with staff, and we'd be happy to work closely with our PD and determine what's the appropriate course of action for the situation there. Staff is sort of reluctant to give off-the-cuff remarks when we don't really know the situation. I was surprised to hear Mr. Butterfield say that Maureen Drive was supposed to be blocked off. Well, I'm not clear on what portions to be blocked off and what project precipitated that proposal to block it off. And so I think more discussion with Mr. Butterfield is in order so that we can really figure out what the situation is. And if it's a desire of the council, staff can certainly place it on the agenda where then we can appropriately discuss it, and we can certainly do that and report back to the council on our findings.
All right. I always appreciate our staff's accessibility and willingness to discuss community issues. They're just fantastic. Do we have business cards on the back table, Regina? Okay, we do. So our staff's cards are on the back table. If you want to take one, and then give our director, Pierre Rivas, a call, and then we can take a look at those issues. All right. Thank you so much. What about mosquito and Pacific? That's hard to say. I agree with you, Mr. Butler. We all agree with you. Those are in terrible shape, and I think we have good news on the horizon. So who would like to update us on those streets? Rebecca.
Hi. Yes, actually, Pacific is scheduled to be one of our recommended CIP projects to be adopted with the 2018-2019 fiscal year, as well as Spring Street and a Canal Street repair as well. We also do have the funding allocated for the Mosquito Road paving. We are working through design right now, and that is also part of it's going to be completed with the Park and Ride facility. Placerville Station 2 is the CIP project, and that is going out to bid late summer, early fall. So they're moving forward.
That's wonderful. So, Mr. Butterfield, good news that all those roads are on the horizon and in our project list for the next year. Yeah. Well, that's thanks to Measure H&L, too.
Yeah, we think so, too.
Exactly. We agree with you. All right. Goal-setting workshop. The date on that and the times?
The date is April 19th. The time, probably 8 o'clock. We haven't firmed that up yet, and it's an all-day workshop, so 8 to 4 approximately. But we can get more information out. We'll notice that as a public meeting, so that information will go out when we have it all put together.
All right, thank you. And while I have you, what about the signs in the parking garage?
So, all of our street signs, Steve Yule has been working on those. He's got them almost ordered. There's been some corrections we've had to make. So they are
we should
ordered
have them
now.
within the next couple weeks.
Within the next couple of weeks, they should be in and start putting up.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Do we have any written communications?
Yeah, there's 3 items that were received tonight related to item 12.1 that is on your agenda. One was received tonight. 2 more were received earlier in the day today. I put copies of those, I believe, on the back table. And then also I wanted to mention I did receive through email today a document related to, I'm not going to say a name because it does not have a name signed to it. However, it was from a gentleman who has sent other items. I put copies of those on the back table also. I need to mention, though, they're in reverse order of when they're received, so if they don't make sense, it's because read the back page first, then the front page, and also the date I put on them. I was stuck in February for some reason.
Must have been in a hurry.
It was a little bit of a hurry, yes. So anyway, those are related to a person who has been talking to me and emailing the council regarding, specifically these are regarding the sheriff's office and the potential for them taking over our police services in the city. So just for your information.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we are on the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion and roll call vote unless a member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. Does any member wish to do so?
I'll move the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay. Does any member of the public wish to comment on any item on the consent calendar? Come on down. Good evening.
Good evening. Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville. In 8.4, I think we need to give a big shout out to what I call the double V's of Placerville. Veerkamp and Vicini have come to our rescue so many times on projects like this, where you had a water line that broke, where we had the hospital out of water, where we had a pothole in front of Thompson's Toyota, all of these things, and they seem to come to our rescue whenever they're called. They interrupt whatever they have already got planned, and they come and rescue us. So I think they need a Knights in Shining Armor Award or something from Placerville.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
I have just to give a great shout out to Doug Veerkamp's quality of work.
Great.
They are just top notch. So I'm for open public bidding on contracts, but he should get a little gold star next to his name, so like a tiebreaker if it's even close. Just his quality of work is supreme.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? No. And we will second that. Doug Veerkamp just provides excellent, exceptional service for this city, as does Vicini, and we are just very grateful for their commitment to our community. And, all right, so with that, may we have a roll call vote?
Madam Mayor?
Oh, yes.
I'm going to recuse on the minutes.
Oh, yes. All right, thank you. We have a roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Mayor Thomas?
Aye.
And Wilkins is recused?
Okay. Yes. Just from the minutes. Just from the minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. No items pulled from the consent calendar and no ordinances or public hearings. We are moving right along this time. Item 12.1 under discussion and action items. Adopt a resolution approving the content of the Public Health Mural Project, Transportation Art, proposed by the County of El Dorado Health and Human Services. Mr. Rivas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. What's being asked of the council is to adopt a resolution to approve the content of a proposed mural. It's being proposed by the County Public Health and Human Services Agency. They did submit, or they're proposing to submit an application for transportation art to Caltrans for the painting of a mural that would be located on the east side of a pier wall located at the underpass at U.S. Highway 50 and Mosquito Road. An application submittal to Caltrans must submit and include a resolution from the local jurisdiction where the mural is to be located supporting the content of the proposed mural. Once completed, the proposed mural is to be finished with a top coat that is a sealant, UV protectant, and graffiti protectant. Regarding short-term and long-term maintenance of the mural, it would include inspections on a weekly basis that would be performed by the El Dorado Arts Council staff and the artist himself to determine the need for graffiti removal or damage repair. Any identified graffiti or damage would be removed or repaired within 3 to 5 days. And on a yearly basis, the mural would be inspected by the El Dorado Arts Council staff to determine the need for any restoration repair work. The installation of the murals will take place over a 2-month period later this year in 2018. And in the staff report, there's a detailed list of the different, of the whole project with the placement of the mural on it. That essentially is concluding staff's report. Staff is recommending that the council adopt a resolution that you have enclosed approving the content of the public health mural project, transportation art, that is proposed by the County of El Dorado Health and Human Services Agency. And that concludes staff's report. And at this time, unless staff has any questions of staff, I would like to turn this over to the project manager, Kristen Torrencasa. She's with the Public Health Division, and also Andrew Vonderschmidt of the El Dorado Arts Council, and they have a brief slideshow presentation for you. So unless you have any questions of me at this time, I'd be happy to turn it over to Kristen and Andrew.
It is always a pleasure to have Kristen and Andrew in the house, so welcome. We're glad you're here. Show us what you've got.
All right, thank you, Pierre. Again, Kristen Torrencasa with Health and Human Services Agency, Public Health Division. So I'll be presenting Public Art, Public Health Mural Project, or co-presenting with Andrew Vonderschmidt from El Dorado Arts Council. So thank you for having us. Just a quick overview of the project. So since the beginning of the project, it's been a true collaboration, collaborative effort with Public Health, the El Dorado Arts Council, and the Boys and Girls Club Western Slope. This is a direct result of Public Health's community health assessment, as well as our community health improvement plan, and it aligns with El Dorado County's strategic plan for healthy communities. So we had some goals for the project. One, it was really important to engage our youth, and we wanted to create a platform for the voices of our youth, which Andrew will be talking a little bit more about. We wanted to provide an opportunity and cultivate an environment in which creativity thrives, so hopefully more public art. We wanted to build social capital, develop a sense of communal ownership over space, and empower people to make changes in their community. And then lastly, the goal was to promote health and wellness among El Dorado County and highlight the 4 focus areas in our community health improvement plan, which are active living, healthy eating, access to health care, and behavioral health.
Wanted to talk a little bit about the benefits of public art, having public art in locations that are underused or underutilized. Like Mosquito Road, it's kind of dark under there, and it will brighten up that area. It'll give the community a sense of pride, sense of ownership. Wanted to talk a little bit about the inspiration that we had going into this with the focus areas given to us by the Health and Human Services. We got together with the Boys and Girls Club and had a painting night with them in which they learned about the focus areas, and they met with the artist and painted upwards of 200 paintings that then the artist took home and put all over his walls and ruminated about the focus areas and what the kids had given us to communicate these focus areas, and that's how we came up with the piece that we have now. These are the kids, and our lovely artist, Orrin Miller, who actually painted Snowshoe Thompson downtown. Aren't they cute? As I was saying, Mosquito Road is kind of a dark area during the day, and just the light of the paint picking up the light will brighten up that area. It's big enough to where it's not going to distract a driver or anyone walking by because it's easily seen. It's no more distracting than a billboard or a sign on the highway, and people drive a lot slower in that area, or at least we hope they do, so it shouldn't really distract them.
So the steps that we've taken thus far, we've identified funding for the project, so we've secured it. Public Health, the Arts Council, and the Community Foundation are supporting this project financially. We had met with the Director of Development Services for the City of Placerville just to garner if interest in public art exists in the City of Placerville. We've been in talks with Caltrans, since this would be proposed on Caltrans property, quite a bit about the feasibility of this location, as well as doing a public art project. And as Andrew said, we did a really fun paint night at the Boys and Girls Club, where we went on a Friday night. It was the teens group, and they painted for a couple hours to really inspire the mural design. And finally, the mural was finalized, and you have that, as well as we brought a poster size of it that we could share with you, as well as everybody in attendance. So for the past, and then finally in February and March, we spent a great deal of time reaching out to the community, doing community outreach and garnering support. So we've reached out to the following, as well as received support from Placerville Downtown Association, the Boys and Girls Club, El Dorado Community Foundation, El Dorado Transit, Placerville Rotary, El Dorado County Transportation Department, Transportation Commission, Chamber of Commerce, SACOG, and Marshall Medical Center. So kind of the immediate next steps, what we're looking today is for support from the city via a resolution that we can, and then once we receive the resolution from both the city and the county, we would like to submit a proposal to Caltrans. Based on their approval, we would, as the county, submit an encroachment permit and maintenance agreement and a copyright assignment statement.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of public art and how it might spur more art in our community and more opportunities for public art. I've heard a lot of talk about murals and sculptural art that can happen within our city and within our county, and we feel like if we accomplish this the way we plan to, or let me rephrase that, when we accomplish this the way we plan to, it will kind of spur some excitement about public art in our community and open up more opportunities to highlight other parts of our community.
And then I'd just like to briefly state kind of what other cities are doing. So if public art excites you like it excites us and you want to see more of it, there are cities that have instituted a percent for art ordinance, which mandates a portion of the budget for city-funded construction projects used to fund and install public art. These ordinances have been around since 1959. And there are over 350 public art programs in the U.S., and 111 of them serve more rural populations or populations under 150,000 or less people. It's just a way to fund public art on an ongoing basis. So it's just something that we ask the city to consider if you want to see more public art in your community. So that concludes our presentation, and we'd like to open it up for questions.
Well, thank you so much. All right, I'll ask my fellow council members if they have any questions or comments at this time before we turn it over to public comment. Councilmember Wilkins?
Is this the only picture that you brought that we can see? That's one of the only options?
Oh, good
No,
question.
I mean, that's of this, though, right?
Yes, that is.
Are there any other options that we can look at, or is it this?
No, that's the design that's been approved by the county.
Okay.
Do you have any other further
now,
comments on
that's
that? Okay, all right. Councilmember Clarici?
I'd love to hear what the public has.
All right, great.
I'll wait.
All right, great. Well, let's get some public comment in, and then we'll have a further discussion on this. Thank you so much for the presentation and for being here. I love
Thank
art.
you very
I'm always
much.
excited to explore art in our community. So, all right, come on down. 3 minutes and state your name. 3 minutes? Turned myself off. State your name for the record and tell us what you have to think about this.
Michael Drobish, Placerville. I live just north of this, so I go through this intersection constantly all day long. Just to start with, I have no idea why El Dorado County Health Department seems to be constantly coming back to the city for items. I don't know if the Board of Supervisors have banished them from their meetings and now they find themselves over here. I don't know. But anyway, so overall, I think this is I don't like it in design, content, and location for numerous reasons. I'll submit my going northbound through there. You're creating a right-hand curve around to the Mosquito and Highway 50, and a very distracting, busy mural will pull your eyes to the left, causing you distraction. Cars come to a complete stop turning onto Locust. I see it all the time. Cars have to slam on the brakes because it's unexpected. Caltrans, there's 9 pages in the staff report of Caltrans guidelines. They recommend not putting paint on structural members, which includes that center column. They recommend if you're going to do it, you put it on the bridge abutments. So for location, you wouldn't see it on the east abutment because it's an inside curve. The west abutment is the place for a mural in that location. One, because cars mostly won't see it, but our trail users will. I still don't understand the theme, how it applies, because Caltrans recommends that basically the theme of the mural be the historical and cultural whatever of the community that it is in. And this is just way too busy with colors and 5 different panels of action. I would like to see, since the train station was right there, the bridge is a bridge for the road and the old train, that a railroad theme mural go on the trail west abutment, because just one big long train is less distracting than 5 different panels of multicolors. And it's more suitable for the history of Placerville, and it would give a shout out to our now defunct railroad. The other thing too is reading the guidelines. To me, it reads that the local jurisdiction where the artwork is rendered is financially responsible for its maintenance and removal. You're asking for a 20-year contract with Caltrans. I don't think we can afford the potential costs. If we still have potholes to fill, we don't have money for, unfortunately, public art on taxpayer dime. If the locals can do it, but ultimately reading Caltrans guidelines, it's on the city. I'd like to see you table this item to get it right, get a little more input, see if we can change some things around and just get it right. But to just go forward with it now, I don't know, I think there might be a little more backlash. Just reading online, the comments seem to be majority opposed to this, at least either in concept, content, or location.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Michael. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else like to speak on this? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Chris Keeney, a resident of Placerville, and I'd like to lend my support to this project. I think it's going to improve and underutilized, as the project proponents described it, and also kind of a dark space. I also live north of that area, so I drive through there several times a day throughout the week, and I think it would brighten the space, and it would actually make a great entrance. Someone who's not familiar with Placerville, if they take, let's see, that'd be 50 westbound, circle back around, and then they'd be greeted by a very, cheery scene that also promotes, health and well-being. And I realized that was the limit of the grant proposition, so that's why the theme is what it is. I looked at it and just thought that, it really does promote health and wellness. And I also would like to see this project be completed. When I read about in the staff report and heard that the kids were involved at the Boys and Girls Club, I really think that would be just a solid thing for them to see their hard work and their inspiration coming to fruition right there on a nice space right there at the edge of our city. I understand that there are some concerns. I read the written comments about working with Caltrans. That is a concern, but I'm sure that passing this resolution just shows the city's support, and that those important details will be addressed by Caltrans. They are bound to protect that structure, so I don't think that it would be to the detriment of the overpass over Mosquito Road there. So I also just want to give some more support to public art. I have seen demonstrations of this in other small towns. It can be something large like a mural that catches the eye, but also can be something small. I've seen cities where the utility boxes are painted instead of just being, industrial green or whatever. A group gets together and paints it so that, it's actually something a little interesting to look at. It doesn't make it go away, but rather than being an eyesore, I think things like little projects like public art, I would love to see that in our town. Thank you for your time, and I hope you agree to support this project.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your comments. Welcome back, Mr. Butterfield.
Hi, Mike Butterfield. I'm kind of agreeing with Mike Dorbish. I think it should be more of a historical thing like this. What they're talking about, the presentation was everything your doctor's supposed to tell you anyway, and that's why we go to doctors. You don't need to have a sign here publicizing it. I agree with brightening it up. I do agree with that. I was telling my wife earlier, we ought to paint the whole inside of that white. Maybe the state should take care of that. And but I know everybody would come along and tag that thing up left and right unless you had upkeep on it. And I might even sneak out. You never know. But I was thinking more along the lines of Mike said a train, and I think that's very good. Maybe you could have a stagecoach and a little dedication to Davy Doc Weiser, who is a man that has done a hell of a lot more for this town than anybody that I know of. And he's done it for free. He hasn't asked for a nickel. He gives Christmas trees out. I mean, well, how old is Davey now? 70-something years old? And he's giving out Christmas trees. And wagon train should be like the Christmas parade. It used to be like that. We need to get back to our roots. I hate to offend anybody, but downtown looks like it's got lipstick all over it. I don't like it. You lost, 6 parking lots? Well, we need 6 parking lots. Those lights out there, I don't care for those light posts out there either. I was talking to Sue Taylor when they were out there working on the place, and this lady standing over there on the other side of the street just fell flat on her back just from the slope, but I realize that's for wheelchairs. But
actually, we need to get back to this agenda item.
She might have been coming out of Liar's Bench, I'm not sure. But I think we need to stick with more of a historical flavor is what I'm thinking Mike was trying to think of. Dedicate it to Davy Doc Weiser or something. And that. I don't think you need to have medical, eat this, eat right, and all that on the side of a freeway underpass and all that. And I mean, because it is true, all of us locals are going to have to run up and down past there all the time. And let's have something that maybe we would like to have. So I second the motion to table this, if at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Again, good evening, Kirk Smith. To let you know, I think there's a number of problems that prompt the need to continue the matter so it could get further study. To begin with, I really believe that this was never submitted to the city's very able and very exceptionally experienced lawyer for review, because there seems to be some very obvious contract problems that suggest that the city has major liability problems. I'll just outline some that appear to me. The first is that frequently municipalities will, in their contracts with private contractors, have a provision where they're to be held harmless. The city is not going to be sued if you screw up. Happened, for example, when it came to doing work on Main Street with the plumbing contractor. Happens all the time. How can you do that, however, with this contract? Because Caltrans provides specific regulations. They have detailed requirements for maintenance of that mural. They're not something you can delegate to somebody else. They're specific requirements, they're very demanding, and they specifically state over and over the municipality. In other words, Placerville's on the hook. When your report says that the cost of this measure is just the cost of staff to prepare the resolution, I'm not so sure. Why? Your contract starts to talk about the specific things that the Arts Council will do. They'll, number one, get up to do the power wash for the walls. They'll set up the scaffolding. For 2 months, they'll then put up the mural, and then they're going to put a special paint over it to deter graffiti artists, etc. Well, that's one time. Do you know of any paint anywhere that lasts for 5 years, 20 years? No. So who's going to come back year after year when it's required to do that maintenance? Now, why does it need power washing? Because it's soot, pollution, and all the rest that's there. You're going to continue to need that for the next, as you've got it here, 20 years. The Arts Council does wonderful work. I love them. A great contribution to the city. But who says they're going to be around for 5, 10, 20 years? Organizations come and go. Do you have any option here? Any bond they're supposed to post to ensure that those costs over the next 20 years are taken care of? And then what about the artist? The artist owns copyrights. So what are those being protected? If you were required by Caltrans to take it down, which can happen under those regulations, how much are you going to owe the owner of that copyright? Now, if that seems like a small thing, I read across a new statute that was, I'm sure, obscure to the rest of you as well. There's a federal law regarding protection of artwork. And so down in Southern California, a building owner had graffiti on his building. He wanted to demolish it. After all, it was his building. It needed to be torn down. He didn't contact the artist and give them a chance to intervene. A judgment was entered against him for $35 million. That covers a lot of spray paint. That's 6 artists who were spray paint artists. So under the statutes, they got the maximum allowable for liquidated damages. So I don't care what you think of the artwork, that's what the statute gave him. So there's all kinds of consequences that haven't been fully analyzed. So that's scary. Lastly, the notice issue really bothers me because I've met these people. They're wonderful. They're exceptionally talented. They do great work. But the public relations, frankly, on Main Street is not too good, because when they hold up that diagram at the PDA meeting, we were told we couldn't take photographs. So who saw it? Peter Wolf, I'll just mention an option to you to consider. Brilliant guy, does wonderful theater design. He showed me something he's very proud of. It is a company that will make a vinyl print that's very huge, like 15 by 15 feet easily. So and he told me it was cheap. I don't remember because I'm not going to be buying that kind of stuff very soon. So imagine if you replicated this thing that's over here, that, wouldn't it be nice if the public saw it, the 10,000 people who live here? What if you had that up there temporarily, and then you got public comments? They could say what they're thinking. As it was, I posted that diagram they finally got a hold of on a Facebook page, and there's now 63 comments. Virtually none of them are favorable in the last 2 hours. So, suggestion, put it up there as a sample. Get public comment, because that's who we represent, the public. Again, great people, but I don't represent the Arts Council. I don't represent the Health Department. My biases are admittedly for the people of Main Street and historic features. That's why I think this needs more consideration to avoid subjecting us to all kinds of problems in the next few years, let alone 20.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Hi, I'm Nancy Williams. I'm actually the County Public Health Officer, so I work for HHSA, but I'm also a City of Placerville resident. I'm a little surprised at all the opposition I'm hearing tonight. I think we're offering a benefit to the community. It's a beautiful mural design that's been already created. It's something that could go somewhere. We found a huge blank space that was just begging for beautification. I think that it's impractical to have the entire community bringing suggestions on what should be in there. I'd like to let Caltrans make the decisions on all the things that would affect them related to safety and what kinds of services it can be on, that sort of thing. But it feels like it's a gift that HHSA is offering to the community. It can go to Placerville. It could go to somewhere else. And I think some of us actually felt a little bit guilty that we're suggesting it from the community, for the community where we already live, and we would be enjoying it ourselves personally, rather than taking it to South Lake Tahoe or down to El Dorado Hills or something like that. It is a very general countywide design. It has lots of beautiful things. It's not necessarily quote-unquote historic, although you could argue that our orchards and agricultural heritage is historic, and there's just, ball fields and kids playing baseball with their parents, and people sitting on park benches, and it really is, the artists put a lot of thought into this, and it really does reflect our entire county very well. And I think it would be a benefit to the community, and I hope we don't have to take it somewhere else. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Good evening. Theodore Juba, City of Placerville, addressing you as a member of the public today. If you can get public consensus on art, it ceases to be art. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, Tom Cumston from Placerville. I am wholeheartedly in support of public art and of projects like this and the beautification of that particular space and many others that need it in this city. I am not at all concerned about the parade of horribles that one of the prior speakers, the what ifs that he managed to conjure up. We have public art already in Placerville, and we've not experienced the kinds of problems that he's suggesting with them. I think when people see art, they respect it. I posted something on Facebook, and I got 63 negative comments, too. I think that's the nature of Facebook, so I wouldn't put too much stock in what people are saying on Facebook about this. Having said all that, I do have to say that I'm not wild about the content. The theme is fine. The execution surprises me, actually, because if this is the same artist who did the Snowshoe Thompson mural at the other end of Main Street, this is a very different style, and it's not one that I care for, but I understand, as the last speaker said, that aesthetics are very personal, and I may have an interesting discussion at home when I get home about this, but that's really my only reservation about the project. I would like to see a lot of projects like this in the city. I think it's long overdue, and to suggest that the city can't afford art, I would say the city can't afford not to have art. I don't want to live in a world where people think that art is a luxury we can't afford. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Kathy.
Good evening, Mayor Thomas and members of the council. I don't think I've addressed you since you've been mayor, but congratulations. I am not here tonight as a representative from Community Pride, although I am the Community Pride chair. First of all, I'm surprised there isn't a copy of the mural on display in the room. I did go back and look it up online under the city's agenda for tonight, and I saw what it was. So that was the first time that I had seen it, and it should be on display in the room. Somebody said transportation, but it's not transportation related. So did it have to be transportation related or health related? In the spring of 2003, Community Pride commissioned Orrin Miller and paid for that beautiful Snowshoe Thompson mural. And then in fall of 2014, he kind of updated it and perked it back up again. So it lasted for 11 years before it needed to be touched up again. And you know that the sun shines very brightly on that wall. And Community Pride also has been responsible for 2 other murals. And all of the murals that we have done have been funded by when we used to have a garden tour and raise money. There's a mural between the Tortilla Flats and Cosmic Cafe that's really on the wall below the plants that has, it's like stones, painted stones, and then it has all kinds of little things like flowers and a little mouse with a hole. And then also in the old City Hall parking lot, it's the little fairy murals. Community Pride is an official committee of the city, and the resolution that adopted Community Pride said to review and make recommendations to the city on garden and landscape beautification efforts and public art on city property. Now, I know this is Caltrans property, but I want to remind you that Community Pride should be one of the players in this whole scheme of things, and it was never brought to us. We have a design for a beautiful historic mural on the side of the Oddfellows Hall, and Mark Acuna had gotten it painted so that the mural could happen, but because we needed scaffolding and we needed money to do it, we never did it. But we have a rendition of that we'd love to have in Placerville. I am emotional about this because I believe in art, but I also believe in Community Pride, and I believe in the history of this town. Deb Power, who's a Community Pride member and artist, said that she would volunteer to help. Judy Davis, who's a Community Pride volunteer, said, "This looks to me like a good way to promote public health while getting people to slow down and perhaps litter less as they travel under the underpass to head west on 50 or go north to Mosquito." Anyway, I think it should have been out for other people to see before it was brought here tonight, and I want you to keep in mind that Community Pride resolution designates us as making recommendations to the city on public art. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Anyone else? All right. With that, I will close public comment. Thank you so much for all your comments, and let me get a few answers first before the council has a discussion on this. Let's start with you, John. Good evening. Our capable lawyer on staff, yes. What is the financial responsibility for maintenance, and are there any potential liabilities or copyright issues potentially involved in this project?
Well, Mr. Smith's comments were accurate to the extent that he made them, in the sense that all of those things can happen. Caltrans will require an agreement between it and the city to maintain, potentially remove, fix whatever we need to do repair. Their obligation with respect to the structure upon which the mural would be placed is only to maintain that which was there prior to the mural. So it's very similar to agreements the city has with Caltrans. When we did the Highway 50 Ops project, and we upgraded the street lights and the traffic signals and all those things, well, Caltrans's obligation is to the standard. We are responsible for the difference between what is required as a result of the enhancement versus what they would have put in. So it's not dissimilar to that type of an arrangement. I mean, I think if the council wants to go ahead with something in this order, you should be prepared to pay for the expenses that are going to be required to maintain, remove, whatever it takes to keep that thing so that it's in the condition that it needs to be in. Now, I understand that the Arts Council will be doing some things with respect to that, but it could very well fall on the city's responsibility at some point in time to do those things. So you need to be aware of that, and if you're willing to accept that, that's the risk you take. I don't think you can insulate yourself from all of those obligations simply by having an agreement with the Arts Council. That can help, but ultimately it will fall on the city potentially. So his comments are appropriate to some extent. There's a risk involved, but you need to weigh that risk. And I haven't seen the agreement from Caltrans, so I suspect if it's like any of their agreements, it's going to be long, it's going to cover everything, and it will be definitely weighted in Caltrans's favor.
Okay.
So, but I would suggest, I am not a copyright lawyer, and I don't know copyright law, so accepting Mr. Smith's comments at face value, it probably would be a good idea to have the artist sign some sort of a waiver in the event that the art has to be removed at some point in time.
Okay, great.
That'd just be a practical thing to do.
Great. Thank you very much. All right.
Madam Mayor, if I may
Yes, absolutely.
comment on that, and with all due respect to Mr. Driscoll, our attorney, and I would also defer to the project manager, Kristen Torrent-Casa, who's been working for quite a long time with Caltrans on this application. Staff is not bringing forward an agreement or proposing that the city would enter into an agreement to maintain this mural.
Okay.
The city's only obligation with respect to this application is to approve of a resolution approving the content of the proposed mural. But the agreement to maintain that mural will be between El Dorado County and Caltrans, not the city. And the mural would become the property of the state of California. And the obligation then, under the provisions of that agreement, is that there's a 20-year time horizon by which the county is obligated to maintain that mural. And the only cost to the city then is basically bringing this item to you. If should the mural be, should you move forward and then Caltrans approve the application, then the city would issue an encroachment permit for the scaffolding work for the period of time that the mural is being painted, and maybe any future events when they're going to affect any repairs on the mural.
Okay, great. Thank you for that helpful clarification.
You're welcome.
Does the applicant have any, I'll invite you up if you have any other clarifications, since there have been so many questions and comments on this. Come on up, Andrew.
I just wanted to talk about the copyright. The artist has already waived his copyright and given it to Caltrans. That's part of the application process. Also, the paint that we use, echoing the other murals that have lasted as long as they have, this paint is made for this purpose and will last up to 20 years. What we're looking at is a maintenance of any damage that happens to it. That's just what we have already talked about. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for that clarification. All right. I'll bring it back to the council for comments and discussion. Vice Mayor Acuna?
Yeah, it's as is typical, Caltrans regulations go on and on and on. And it's very clear that they will own the copyright, or you will not operate on their property. I was just getting to I was reviewing the resolution, and you get down to the third to the end there. The mural will become the property of the state of California in 20-year lifespan. Long-term maintenance mural is insured, subject to an agreement between the county of El Dorado and the state of California. So that would be the concerns that we're hearing, which I share. We don't have money to fix roads, unfortunately. And 20 years is a long time, and we all come and go, and agencies thrive and decline and so on and so forth. I do appreciate the effort that went into this. The students did exactly what they were tasked to do, and that was represent healthy lifestyles. And the content of the mural certainly represents that. And it is unfortunate that there has been such limited public sharing of this. I understand probably some of the thinking behind it, but it puts this opportunity or this operation in a difficult place because we do everything very in the public and very transparent. We can't have secret mural designs or anything else. Saying all of that, I appreciate the desire to encourage healthy lifestyle, but I don't see this particular content in how it relates to either Placerville or El Dorado County as it currently is presented. There certainly are, everything that is pictured is available in El Dorado County and or Placerville. The average person driving by is going to wonder what it's, a traveler is going to wonder, well, what that's about. And it sounds like a lot of the local citizens are going to go, well, that doesn't really relate to me. I don't see gold mining. I don't see Apple Hill. I don't see, the other historic sites. Train was mentioned. The bell tower is another classic icon of the area, and so on like that. So I was just wondering, content-wise, I feel that it would be a great benefit if it could tie to the community.
Thank you. Councilmember Borelli?
Well, I have heard this presentation when it was given to Transportation. I'm going to reiterate my comments that I had then. I agree with one of the people in the audience, I think it was Michael. I think it's too busy. I think there's too much to grasp in the amount of time that a person in a car would have to grasp. And so therefore, in my opinion, it defeats the purpose of what they're trying to promote. I understand that they were bound by having its health and wellness, and I understand that they had to depict that. But just my personal opinion, if they could have just done one thing. I love it that they're picking this wall. I think that is just the ugliest underpass ever. And I love it that they want to enhance it with something like this. But I think it's too busy. And especially, it's not in an area where cars can or should slow down to observe it. And one of the things that I suggested, and I think Andrew told me why they couldn't do it, but I suggested some kind of wording or something on there. And he said that, I believe this is, I don't want to misquote you, Andrew, but I think you said that it's been proven that sometimes wording takes away the attention of drivers. But I can't see how wording is going to take away any more attention than all this busyness.
Oh, actually, Andrew, we'll get staff to answer that.
I didn't mean to
back and
bring
forth.
you back.
Sorry.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I'm just blabbering.
No, not at all.
Anyway, so and I still hold the same opinion. I think it's beautiful, and I would love to see this somewhere, but I don't think on that underpass that this particular rendering belongs there. So that's my opinion.
I'm going to, at this point, ask Pierre. I know we had comments earlier today about the opportunity to incorporate, perhaps some of our local references, like Goldbug Park and Rotary Park, and enjoy these different local assets, the El Dorado Trail, by incorporating wording along the bottom. And I know that that's a problem with Caltrans. Can you speak to that, Pierre?
I know that the Caltrans does not allow any verbiage, no lettering, writing on the mural, so it has to be just a mural. And I would recommend getting some comments from the county that are sponsoring the mural, whether or not they can work with the artist, maybe go back to the drawing board and incorporate some features in essentially meeting their purpose. Because it's important to understand, at least, and this is probably more from this individual staff member, I think public art begets public art. Mm-hmm. This whole area, you look around the city and you see a lot of canvas, meaning blank concrete walls that scream out for something to be done to them, to beautify them. And it's not to say that the city would love to have a mural that depicts some of the art historical history of the city. Well, a lot of these other organizations out there can maybe propose to do something that is historical. But it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of individuals to put something like this together. These murals don't just come on a whim. And, they have a very reputable artist that you're all very familiar with that's doing the mural. And I think it's important to keep that in perspective. When you're looking at approving the content, it's not so much as taking a community poll, because it's not going to be a community poll. You're going to have a very focused group that is proposing a particular mural from their perspective, because it's art. It's like one of our speakers said, if everybody likes the art piece of art, it's probably not art. So with that, I would like to turn that over to either Kristen or Andrew or somebody to speak to whether or not it's possible to modify anything here, at least with the background, to make it more palatable. But again, I think it's something where there's a lot of other canvases around. If there are folks out there that want to submit a mural design, they can do that. If it's on city property, it would go through community pride per the city's own guidelines. But this is Caltrans, and it's a Caltrans feature. That's why it's called transportation art. And that's the city's function in this, is approving a resolution so it could be submitted along with the application.
Great. Thank you so much for that excellent clarification. Councilmember Clarici.
Okay. I was at the unveiling at the PDA, and I have to admit, I was not taken by the particular effort. Kind of back to what Councilmember Acuna said, this puts us in a very strange spot, because you have a bunch of freckled-faced kids who worked all night and probably ate some pizza and had some drinks and stuff. And they came up and they're all happy, and then they hand it to this well-known person, and he comes up with this thing here. And then it comes to us, and it's like, okay, fine. And then, we get some kind of weird threats about it being moved somewhere else. And it's kind of like, okay, fine, maybe it goes somewhere else. And I think that there should be something in that space. Okay, so I want to preface all of this by, I think there should be something in this space. I'm sorry, except for maybe Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and maybe parts of Iowa, this mural could be any town USA. There's nothing in here that speaks to me in terms of where I've lived for the last almost 40 years now. And that doesn't mean it has to have a bell tower. The other thing, too, is not everything has to be a train, not everything has to be the miner, not everything has to be that. I don't think personally. That's my own personal feeling. Take it for what it's worth. And sometimes we get a little too focused on that. I think everyone in this room should know, and probably in this county should understand, mining started the county, but mining died fairly quickly. And the major thing that carried on after mining was agriculture. Agriculture has been part of this community since almost from the mining days on, and it was the thing that survived mining, and it still exists in this county. So agriculture is, if you have like the local whatever is in that basket. I think we could have something here that is very nice. I support the concept. The other thing too, and this is not, it's not scolding, it's not lecturing. For the folks that brought this to us, God bless you, this is really lovely. It's like you don't remember the town we all live in here. And the idea that, you can kind of do this. And I was at that meeting, and I don't know who said it, but they basically said, this is it. Can we do anything with this? No, this is it. I can't imagine. It's like riding a red flag in front of a bull. And I sat there and I'm going, well, wait a second. How can that be it? No one here even knows about this thing. It can't be it. And apparently from that day to now, it was pretty much it. I can support something very similar to this with some nod to the actual place where it's going to exist. I don't care about the copyrights, and that's all details. That'll all get worked out. We've got plenty of murals in town. We should have some more. I like the idea of putting something on the metal boxes. I think that's a great idea. But we got to do something with this before it gets put up. I support the project, but I'd like to support it with some more stuff.
All right,
whatever
thank
that
you.
is.
All right, Councilmember Wilkins.
Okay. I agree with most of what everybody has said up here. I love art. I love painted utility boxes. The idea of sculpture sounds really cool for Placerville, and I'm really wanting to preserve our history, but at the same time, we have to be cool enough in other ways, so not just history buffs want to come here. So, and I think art is a great way to bring everybody together. This location, I think, is perfect for a mural that's 77 feet long, and I think that the dark with the light reflecting and everything is perfect also. And I also understand the purpose and the funding is for healthy living. So we can't necessarily just have a big train up there. That might be a good project for a utility box, maybe like a cool train. There's a nice Star Wars one. It's my favorite. I think it's in Auburn. Yeah, we could do like historic stuff there, and then who knows? I mean, the sky's the limit, because yeah, somebody said we have a lot of canvas here in Placerville. So yes, I agree that this particular, what I'm looking at right here, I wouldn't want to see up there. I think we could incorporate, so it's more identifiable as the locals, and when people come in, they say, oh yeah, this is what this place is about, not is this Stockton Boulevard, or is this, I mean, I don't know. So those are my thoughts on this.
Okay. Well, I personally, I thank everyone for the comments, and I thank the community. And as an artist myself, I know how hard it is to design art by committee, and that's what we're doing here. And so, I thank you all for being here and for being open to the community's comments and being gracious about that, because we're all just new to seeing this. It's the first time I've seen this too, and we all get excited about it, but bring our own perspectives to it with all kinds of concerns and questions. And so, thank you for being patient with us as we all, wrestle with that this evening. I personally, and I know we all do, welcome public art. And as Kathy so eloquently has talked about, we have a lot of wonderful public art in our community already, and I would personally love to see a lot more of it. And I liked the idea that, public art is just, it reflects different perspectives and different feelings and flavors, and you may like one mural better than another, but you combine them all together and you have a really rich community. So I don't have to like really love everything that goes up in public art, and I think we all need to have that perspective. That said, I do have a few comments that echo my fellow council members and some of the community. I would either love to see this as is, perhaps along the walking trail, because that, to me, that speaks about the healthy living. And that's one of the wonderful parts of our community is the walking trail. It's our connection to the Apple Hill Camino area. It's our connection with other parts of the county. And this, to me, as I look at this bold, colorful, creative, mural, I like the reflection of the seasons. That shows me this sense of place. It shows different types of our community, from kids to seniors. I like that. That reflects us. As is, I can see it along one of the walls of the walking trail. If this were to go where it's proposed right now, I would like to see some local references to Placerville, and if that could be added by the artist, I don't know. We talked about a bell tower in the background, and an ore cart, or a few nods that would say, that's why this mural is here inside the city of Placerville. It's not just an El Dorado County mural, it's an El Dorado County mural inside the city limits. And I don't know if the artist or the Health and Human Services, the Arts Council, would be open to that, but that's also what I'm hearing from our community. At this point, I'm going to kind of break protocol, and because our main goal is to have a successful project. And so I'd like to either invite Andrew or Kristen up here to, you've heard some of the comments and the concerns from the community and the council. We support this in concept. There's some things that maybe could be tweaked to lend better community support. Do you have any suggestions on how we can collaborate more to make this, really successful in our community?
I have a couple comments, as well as I'd like Andrew to speak. Just In terms of the local references, yes, public health is primarily funding this project. So though we think art is really important and impacts the physical environment, makes it more walkable, makes it safer. So there is a lot of public health benefits to art. We also wanted a strong public health theme.
Sure. Hence
why we're funding the project. We thought, and Andrew's going to speak a little bit about the backgrounds and how it ties into Placerville and El Dorado County, but I will say, so the Public Health Department partook on a community health assessment. We had almost 1,000 people, residents of El Dorado County, submit input into what the needs are of our community. So this is where we sought a lot of community engagement in what can we do to become a healthier community. And the feedback turned into our community health improvement plan with 4 focus areas picked by our community. This is depicting those 4 focus areas. So we really, that's where we got the community input engagement on this public health mural. And we wanted to engage our youth who really, after learning more about these focus areas, came up with these designs. So that's really where the community came and really had a lot of input. Also, we are speaking on, this is just one piece of art. We want to see more. We want to see historical art. We want to see different perspectives. We really wanted to provide something beautiful that really wasn't open for debate or input, because I think everything can be debated and provided input, and everybody has different ideas. So for this, we wanted to have a public health focus, but we want to encourage other community members, and that was one of our goals. Encourage community members to make change in their city and take on one of these projects. There are a ton of open canvases. Just on that Mosquito Road, there's 4 blank concrete walls. And I'll give you a personal example on why this location was picked. So I'm from the Bay Area, and my dad's a big skier, so we would come up and ski at Sierra Tahoe, and we'd always stop in at Placerville to get gas or fast food. And I always thought Placerville was gas and fast food. It was just a stop on my way to Tahoe. And I thought, you know, I see this empty canvas, and if we had some cool public art there, I think people that stop in, they're going to get a better sense of Placerville, because now that I live here and I've been a 6-year resident, I'm like, wow, this is one of the best kept secrets. There's so much Placerville has to offer, but for people that are just going to Tahoe and back to the Bay Area, they're not seeing that. So we thought that this would be a great opportunity as well.
I just want to talk about the process that we came to bring this to you. It is definitely, I'm going to take it all on my shoulders. The artist wanted to keep the mural semi-secret, only that he would have a dramatic reveal as he was painting it. We were never trying to, pull one out, pull the rug out from under you or anything like that. I personally realized that we could have had a little bit more engagement, but I want to echo a couple of the comments that came up. A camel is a horse that's designed by committee, so it's really hard to get input on something like this from the community at large and come up with a piece that the artist is proud of. He already had a lot of voices in his head talking to him, telling him what to create, and unprompted, he did create the backgrounds in each tableau are locations that he physically went out to in El Dorado County and painted himself to represent the county without taking away from the job that was given to him, which was to depict these different focus areas. I want to point out that this is a public health mural that the health department is asking us to administer. The Arts Council would love to do other murals. I would love to do a historical mural, and if we are engaged to do that, we will find the artist, we will do what they're asking us to do, and we'll create that too. This was created for the Public Health Department. So that's why it has the focus it does, and it doesn't have a historical focus. I love trains. I'd love to do that. But that's not what this is. So that the point that I'm making is this is what we were engaged to do, and I feel like we've really knocked it out of the park. It is on us for not sharing it earlier. Because again, I come from theater. I understood the dramatic reveal that he wanted to have. I supported that. We should have shared it earlier.
No problem. I really appreciate you're helping us understand the whole process and where we are, why we're here. would you consider moving it along one of the walls of the walking trail where folks could see it and enjoy it up close rather than, driving by it, and they would only see it in a car? I mean, is that a possibility?
I'll give Kristen another moment to think about it while I mention that the process that's gotten us to get this application where it is now would have to start again, because we would have to get a whole new application going for a different location.
Even on the same freeway
that's
corridor.
Caltrans.
Are you saying, so there's the four walls, so just on one of the other wall that, on the backside of?
Yes, along the walking trail, exactly, rather than on where Main Street comes into Mosquito.
That was the original thought, I'll be honest, but personally, I think it's such an eyesore. It is so dark and sad, and I drive that frequently, and it gets so much traffic that just for the visibility factor, I mean, I feel like it's screaming for a mural, and I think public health, I mean, universal wellness, it's such a positive message of all ages, practicing healthy behaviors. Who knows, it might encourage somebody that's driving to walk or ride a bike or practice healthy behavior. So it was really chosen because of the high visibility, high traffic, as well as it's right near the bike trail, El Dorado Trail. It's a gateway to Main Street, Broadway, Highway 50. So I just don't know why there hasn't been a mural there sooner, to be honest.
Patty.
Kristen, I just have a real quick question. Which came first, the mural or the location?
Which came first? So I work in public health, and one of my responsibilities is active living and looking at the physical environment and what we can do. So I brought to you a couple months ago a parklet, murals I've been learning a lot about, and I just happened to be driving that area and saying, and just remember when I was 16, 17, driving that area from the Bay Area, I was like, I think this could really put Placerville in a great light. So they kind of came at the same time, to be honest, but this really was meant to be a springboard demonstration project to encourage more community members to do these types of projects in their community, because like Pierre said, there are so many open canvases, and people go to San Francisco or go to these different places just for public art. It really attracts visitors, and the Chamber of Commerce wrote us a letter of support, and we've received many letters of support for this project, as the picture as is supporting it. So
All right.
I'm not saying that it would be a deal breaker to move it or potentially change it. I'm not ready to answer that, but
no, I just, like I said, I wondered whether you had any, if you had picked that space, your palette, if you had anything in mind, or if you just decided to, which was so commendable, to go with the kids at Boys and Girls Club. But I was just wondering, if you first picked the palette, if you had something else in mind. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. Because like I say, my big objection is that it's just too busy. Mm-hmm. So for somebody to really enjoy it, and I agree with Mayor Thomas that if it could be someplace where more folks that are walking could just really take the time and enjoy it. So anyway, thank you for your answer. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no problem. And we think that people drive that multiple times a day,
true.
so it'd be really exciting for them to discover something new in the image.
Right.
After the second or third time.
Thank you for your explanations, and I'm going to bring this back to council for final
Thank
decision.
you very much.
Thank you very much. All right. I do like the idea that a vibrant art community is made up of all different kinds of arts, and this does reflect the lifestyle that our community does love and cherish. And so I appreciated those explanations on your process and why we're here. And I do like the idea that, it's a call to action for other artists and community groups to come forward and find a project, come up with your own wonderful imagery and fund it. And that is a really difficult thing to do. And so is there any other council discussion on this? No? Okay. So with that, I am going to move that we approve the resolution approving the proposed transportation art as recommended by staff. I don't hear a second. Does anyone have a further motion?
I'm not going to make another motion, but I think for all the reasons that many of us gave is why we're not seconding to approve it, because...
Well, is there another motion on the table?
Did I understand that they said they didn't... I'm not understanding if they want to go to the work of redoing this in any way, shape, or form to try to work with that, some of our suggestions as to why we're not in favor of it.
My understanding was that the art... Cleve, do you have anything else to add?
I was just going to maybe recommend an option that rather than deny it right now, you could table it to the next meeting or a future meeting and ask staff and perhaps if you go back and work with them based on what you've heard and see if there are any options, and to give them some time, because we did kind of put them on a spot tonight to say, are there, could they do that tonight? But you could give them the option to look at, what, possibilities might be out there to continue this in either as you mentioned, in another location on the reverse side of the wall or something, or revise this to something that works for all of you. But staff would be happy to go back and work with them and see what options are there. We can then bring it back, and it may come back and say, no, the only option is this, and then you could know what direction you want to move on it.
Well, I have a question, which I heard her say that if we moved locations, we'd have to go back to square one, but I didn't hear anything about tweaking the design or the content. Would that trigger a whole other application?
I don't think so, because I don't think Caltrans looking at the design. They're just looking at the location, and as long as we approve the concept as reported in the resolution, then I think that Caltrans would.
So yeah, to answer your question, no, it wouldn't. We haven't submitted anything formal to Caltrans. We've submitted a draft with the artwork and the proposed location. Caltrans could always come back to us and say, we don't approve this location, even though I've been talking to them for the past year and they have yet to say one concern about the location. So I don't think changing the location, it's more the desire to change it, because then there's still going to be that blank canvas wall right there that I think for even the city of, personally, I think the city of Placerville would benefit having something there versus an ugly, dark concrete wall. That's I think is the hesitation, so that I'm hesitating on changing the location, because I'm passionate about the location. In terms of tweaking with the design, I'd have to talk to the muralist. That's why I've just been kind of hesitant. It's very personal to him. So I'm trying to be as respectful as possible to the muralist in the design, as well as the team's design as well.
Thank you, Kristen.
Madam Mayor, if I could comment?
Yes, Vice Mayor. Good.
Thank you. And I appreciate all the audience's comments and their concerns on both sides of this item, this proposal. And I think I'm being fairly objective, is sitting up here trying to weigh the tasks as they were given to the students and then ultimately to the artist and the other folks that were involved in presenting this as a healthy lifestyle. And I think it absolutely does that. Then it becomes the issue, as Ted mentioned, if we all agreed on it, then it's no longer art. And I've been through a couple of these with Community Pride, and I have watched both sides of the community, the wall across the street with the little mouse holes and what have you. Maybe not as trafficked as it once was, but that was quite a hoot to watch people discover all the little things that are painted on that long retaining wall over there. And there was a great skepticism of what in the world is a crazy city doing now. Same thing over there by the community restroom next to the Oddfellows building, the little fairy garden that's painted in there. And again, there was the skeptics on both sides that, oh goodness gracious, what are they doing now? It's a great novel little thing. People enjoy them. They still, many years later, are serving their purpose. So I understand that. So we need to sit here as a judge for the proposal that's before us and the very difficult task of then saying, does this represent at least the majority of the community, and are they going to want to drive, are we all going to want to drive by this every day? And is this the best message to go on this particular piece of Caltrans real estate? And again, I still have a lot of concerns about the message that the speeding tourist is going to get from this, as well as the local people are going to look at it and always, they're either going to love it or they're really going to hate it because it doesn't have a wagon train, or it doesn't have Davy Dock, or it doesn't have a train. I understand that. That's our difficult job. There is a photograph here in the proposal that shows the back wall, which is really the back wall of where the train went through back when it still was here. Yeah, it should have a train on it in a perfect world, but it doesn't. If this proposal was to do what it was supposed to do, and that is public health, putting it on that next panel, which I believe is actually the west abutment in Caltrans talk, that is a place where the walking community is going to see it. The driving community is going to get a little glimpse of it. And then I wonder if you're going to tweak their curiosity, because it is very vibrant, and it is a very, I'll call it it's an athletic, active design. They're going to say, well, what in the heck is that back there? And those that are interested are going to want to pull over, and they're going to, oh, what a cool thing they put back here.
That was the wall I was talking about. Yeah.
The walkers are going to enjoy it. They're going to get it. There, you will have it in its community. It's still an ugly wall back there, and it's the old hole where the train used to go through. It's still very much in need of help, and it has a tremendous pedestrian traffic every day, 7 days of the week. So I wonder if that's a possibility. And taking Cleve's, I think, wise suggestion to bring this back in either 2 weeks or whatever is appropriate, and give some other answers.
Do I have a motion on that?
Yeah, that would be my motion, to consider the west abutment and to bring this back in.
And I'll second that.
Okay.
At a date to be determined for further review and getting input from the Art Council as well as the muralist.
Okay. And you
That
seconded
would be my
Ed?
motion.
I did.
Okay.
I have a different sort of perspective. I think telling people that are walking that they should walk more is interesting as a concept. I think that the driving public, if they drive by it enough times, will see it and it will register. You have to remember that a lot of people will see it as they stop, and they'll look over here and they'll go, oh, look at that. And then they'll go, oh, okay, cool. And then they'll turn or do whatever. Well, they might even go straight. I don't really want to see this on that other wall. I think if we're going to have a mural, we should have it out in front of God and everybody, and I think this is a good spot for it, and I think folks will be able to, in their minds, sort of over time, come to terms with it. I just don't like this one. I just don't like the mural as it currently exists, and that's my problem. I think where it's going to go is great. I love that idea, but I just don't like this mural, and that's my problem. And I am actually a citizen of this city, and I can say a resident of the city, and my opinion shouldn't matter any more than anybody else's, but it kind of does. And so I want to have, I want to be comfortable with this decision, but I don't think we ought to move it to the back. I would not support that as a thing. I think we should put it out here in front of everybody and get people to look at it. And I think that a gifted artist like this gentleman is, will be able to more than adequately figure out a little way to drop some fairies in there that we will all like. I don't think we're too far away from this thing.
Okay. All right. Yes, Councilmember Wilkins.
I totally agree with what John just said. But I have a question. Is the motion closing the door on this location and the possibility of just adding some more of the Placerville feel to the healthy living message? Are we closing the door and we're only going to explore the other wall, or would we come back in a couple weeks with both?
That's a good question. Can I answer, my esteemed council member?
Your motion.
Tricia, I actually would prefer to see appropriate mural out here on the front wall, the one that really does speak to El Dorado County or Placerville, and having the artist tweak it. I agree with John. If we want to go with this health design and it can't be altered, then I would suggest to put it on that back wall. And it kind of gives a gift to the walking community. It brightens up the area that they go through every day, which is now very ugly.
Yeah.
So it's a gift to the walkers. That's how I saw it, and to the bicyclists and the horse and the equestrians that tromp through there, to beautify for them.
I like that. That's an idea now.
So your motion is for staff to work with the Health Department and the Arts Council, after hearing our concerns and our discussion, as well as the community, to come back with a suggestion.
Yes, either moving this, consider moving this
mural
as it is to the rear wall to accent the trail and the trail users' enjoyment, or come back with some revisions to this design and have it on the middle wall as depicted.
And that's the way
Okay,
I
and that was your second.
Well, yeah, and that's what I understood him to say.
right.
Not that we definitely just take this and move it on that other
We
wall.
leave our options open.
All right, are we ready for a vote?
Because Pope Pius badgered Michelangelo for a long time while he was working on the Sistine Chapel.
Well, we are not
and there's
Pope Pius.
all sorts of changes up there. So a gifted artist, and they don't come more gifted than Michelangelo, can figure out a way to alter their design just a little bit if the Pope was here. Okay.
Before we vote, I want to thank you for your patience as we wrestle with this. And by no means is this any discouragement of public art, and we so appreciate all your efforts. So with that, we'll vote on this motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. All right, we look forward to seeing what you come back one more time as we all had a chance to think this through. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it, and thanks for all your efforts. Okay. Oops, I turned myself off again.
Just be done.
All right. We are now on 12.2, file and acknowledge the mid-year 2017-2018 budget report as presented by Mr. Warren.
Good evening, Madam Mayor,
Good
members
evening.
of the City Council. So the purpose of this report tonight is to answer two primary questions. One is, how is the local economy doing, which has a direct effect to your revenue streams?
Can you bring your microphone closer, Dave? We
Sure.
can't hear you.
And is the city living within its means? And we'll take a close look at the general fund.
Dave, would you start over again? Because
I
we
just-
didn't hear
Still can't
anything
hear
you
you.
said.
I just want to note one thing. You just said the phrase, is the city living within its means, and half the room left. And it's like you would...
That's what happens,
We
yeah.
spent an hour talking about a mural and actually the fiscal health of the community, and everybody takes off. It's the most... It's the...
Don't take it personal, Dave.
Okay, Dave, go
it's the
ahead.
greatest thing.
I think this mic's better too. So,
Okay, good. Thank
so
you.
the purpose of this report is to answer two primary questions. The first one is how is the local economy doing, which has a direct effect to your revenue streams. The second is the city living within its means? And we'll take a close look at the general fund and all your operating funds to answer that question. So looking at the regional unemployment rates for 2017, the blue bar indicates California unemployment rate, red is El Dorado County, green is Sacramento Metropolitan Statistical Area, and the purple is Placerville. And as you will see, over the last 12 months, the unemployment rates have steadily declined. For example, California went from 5.5 to 4.2 over the 12-month period. El Dorado County, 5.36 to 3.6, way below. Sacramento MSA, 5.3 to 3.8. And Placerville, 7.1 to 4.9. And I want to point out, when you get to the point, good news. When you get to the point to where you're in the low fives, high fours, you're actually at full employment. So those that can work are actually working for the most part. So very good. Placerville again at 4.9 in December of 2017. And you can see in this graph that Placerville's historical unemployment rates have steadily declined over the last 5 years. Just in 2013, your unemployment rate was 16%, which is really high. And now it's 4.9. So good progress. Looking at the real estate market, the number of residential sales in the greater Placerville area, this isn't just the city, but in the greater Placerville area, and over the last 5 years, and you can see that the volume 6 months out of the year, 2017 is in the blue, kind of the light blue there. Dark blue. It actually, 6 months out of the 12-month period, exceeded the 2016 level. Interestingly enough, the number of sales total was 272, which is exactly the amount in 2016. So kind of flat overall. However, when you look at the average price of residential sales in the greater Placerville area, we actually exceeded the 2016 average 11 months out of the 12-month period. So inventories remain low, prices are going up, and so the real estate market continues to stay strong, the seller's market. Now I'd like to hand it over to Steve Ewell to talk about the recreation program activities.
Thank you, David. It's always a pleasure to talk about Goldbug Park. Once again, it's doing extremely well. The reason that the Goldbug tours are fairly flat is just due to being at capacity. We have a waiting list for tours. As far as aquatics go, this is a pretty small sample size for this particular exercise, in that we don't have the June numbers in there. So we had a really good June, our last aquatic season. So we're meeting all of our revenue projections throughout. Lap swim was down a little bit, and so were swim lessons to a certain extent. Some of that is due to not offering as many lessons and then having larger lessons sizes, so we didn't have to spend as much on personnel and still provide the same, not as many options for the public, but still being able to accommodate all the classes. Within our special interest classes and camps, they're down a little bit. Camps kind of fluctuate based. We usually are in some kind of partnership with the El Dorado High School, and the advent of year-round sports has kind of taken some of the attendance away from kind of the entry-level camps like that we typically would offer. So there's now AAU, USVBA. Those are all acronyms for different sports that are starting at a younger age and going year-round. Within our adult sports program, it stayed relatively flat, and the same could be said for our youth basketball program, which for youth basketball, that's really encouraging that we're staying kind of flat, and that a lot of the school districts that participate in our program have declining enrollment within them, but our program continues to be extremely popular, and we have a lot of kids playing in our lower age levels, which bodes well for the future. So with that, I'll turn it back over to David.
Thank you, Steve, and now I'll hand it over.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Steve, I want to go back up to that lap swimming. And I remember that we had a tremendous outpouring from the community and the lap swimmers, and just really begging us to put this program in, and now it looks like it's declining. I know there's one lady who comes, I can't remember her name, but she always thanks us for initiating that
Bonnie.
program. And so why is this declining?
I think if we were to look at the full sample size of the aquatic season, it would flatten out some. It's so weather plays such a role in our attendance for lap swimming.
Okay.
And it can be, believe it or not, it's not only being too cold, it can also be too hot. And that really affects the numbers. And we had a mild June, so I think our numbers will flatten out when we look at the entire aquatic season. So it's not quite as bad as it looks. Another thing is you're talking about smaller numbers, so the percentage looks kind of drastic. But
well, no, I'm looking at maybe I'm not seeing this right, but it looks like it was 640, and then it dropped down to 500, and I mean that's almost 100 folks on lap swim.
Yeah, that's visits. It's based on the number of times people came to the pool, so it's not people.
Okay, so that's not a sign. They don't sign up for so many or anything like that. They just appear.
Yeah, they pay to appear. Yeah, but they can have multiple appearances even within the day.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. Now I'm going to hand it over to Pierre Rivas to talk about the development trends.
Thank you very much, David. This slide is depicting or showing our building division activity, and is you look from, we actually wanted to compare the numbers from, say, going back to fiscal year 2013-14 through to the present. And if you look at the forecast, we're actually showing two different numbers there for you to make sure that you consider. And if you look at the footnotes, the top number, and actually we are taking a more conservative approach, we're looking at a forecast of only 111 some odd $1,000 coming in from construction permits. And that is not looking at seeing the Hampton Inn and Suites. We're still not sure if that's going to be submitted. We hope it does, because then you can see the difference it makes, and it jumps up to 179,000 instead of just 111,000 in fees for construction permits. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that we'll still have the additional commercial type development come in, which actually can generate substantial fees increase and cause the big swings. Looking at the plan check fees, sort of the same. If you look at the forecast, we're looking at 68,000. The footnote is number 3, so we're looking at some additional single-family dwelling units. And you'll see later on in some of the other charts that we have prepared how single-family residential development has really carried the city quite a bit over the last couple of fiscal years. So looking at the issued building permits, we were doing fairly well. There was a steady increase from 2011 through 12. Up to 2015-16, we saw quite a bit of growth. And then 2016-17, it was sort of a peak for number of building permits issued. We had 528. We're projecting about 470 by the end of this fiscal year, 2017-18, just based on the trends that we've been seeing. Next slide, please. So this slide is showing building valuations. And again, you can look at, we had some substantive activities at 2015-16 and 2016-17 where you can see 18 million valuation, 19 million valuation, but we're seeing quite a substantial drop. We're not anticipating any commercial development. And again, you can look at the footnotes there and you can see how one large major commercial project, a hotel for example, can affect the projected amounts that we're looking at for the, to complete this fiscal year versus the projected if we were to have the hotel realized. We jump from 9 million all the way up to 16 million projected. Moving on to planning and zoning revenues. Again, it looks like our banner year was fiscal year 15-16, and then there was, so you can see there was sort of a real sharp rise to that fiscal year 15-16, and then quite a drop to fiscal year 16-17, and again, we're looking at we're still projecting quite a drop for the end of this fiscal year. And it's interesting too, I think as we were coming out of the Great Recession, that's where you see a lot of investment, and people are looking at spending that additional money maybe to get their entitlements from more of a planning and zoning perspective, either through general plan amendment and rezones or through other discretionary permitting applications. And so that's sort of why we're seeing that. Hopefully this isn't foretelling something in the future as far as a long-term trend, but at least that's what we're projecting at the moment. So moving on to the next slide, this is what's really carried the city quite a bit. I think when you look at the number of single-family dwelling permits that we've issued, the number of actual dwelling units, you look at 56 in 2015-16 and 51 in 2016-17. That's very substantive. That's probably, if you took those 2 years alone and added them up, you're probably looking at over 100 dwelling units been added to the city of Placerville's housing inventory, which is probably greater than the sum total for the last 10 years. But we have seen quite a bit of a drop, and mainly that's due to Eschaton building out, Ridgewood Orchard Hill building out. But I do want to let you know, sort of keeping it in my back pocket, we're still hoping to see Astoria. Actually, let me repronounce that, Estonia. Estonia was purchased by a developer in Sacramento, and they're looking at submitting their improvement plans to final the tentative map. and then maybe we can look at seeing an additional 39 residential units being developed. But that's probably going to occur, that may not occur during the end of this fiscal year, but maybe for the 2018-2019 fiscal year.
Mr. Rivas?
Yes.
Could you let us where? I think I know where this is, but everyone else is going where? Well, Estonia is like a country in Europe, but where is this this proposed thing?
Yes, it's actually quite easy to see from different vantage points. You can see it readily from Airport Drive or from the airport. It's located just downslope north of the airport. It's accessed off of Texerna on Upper Broadway. And it's all rough graded, and so it really you can readily see where it'll be, and we're very happy that there's a developer interested in developing it because they're very, very nice view lots, and in our discussions with developers are looking at mid-range housing for middle class more or less, and upper housing units, not wealthy housing units, but more in the probably the $350,000-$450,000 range.
That's fantastic news.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Great.
And we're still getting a couple bites on Cottonwood, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that Cottonwood phases 4 and 6 will sometime come to fruition. And again, that would add another 39 single-family residential units to our inventory. So moving on to the following slide, impact fees. And again, you'll see those impact fees basically track very well with your single-family dwellings, because impact fees, you're looking at traffic impact fees, sewer impact fees, water and park. And you had a lot of we had a boom in residential development, which paid for the lion's shares of those impact fees that you see in that chart when we're comparing the 4 different fiscal years. So with that, unless the council has any questions, that's sort of our outlook for development.
Thank you very much. This is very good, very exciting. I think at one point or another we made I don't know if it was a request, or I know I've chatted with you about it, is to get and I know the answer will be, it depends, but if we could get a number, so say for example, I own a lot in town, and I'm going to build a 2,000 square foot house on it. What would the fees be if I wanted to build that dwelling? And you don't obviously need to answer that right now, but or just a ballpark. And hopefully it won't, if it takes more than 2 minutes, don't do it. But
yeah, basically I can't rattle it off the top of my head.
That's a little disappointing.
But I can certainly mention it at our next council meeting. I will take a look at our fee schedule and add it up what it is for just your typical 2,000 square foot house. Be happy to do that for you.
Thank you very
that number.
much. Thank you, Pierre.
Because it'll probably take about 10 minutes to do that.
Well, there's so many folks ask me, about our building permits and the fees and everything, so that would be quite helpful. I'd appreciate it. Thank
very,
you.
very good question, and we'll certainly provide you with that number.
Thank you. All right, Dave, Bradley Burns.
Thank you, Pierre. There. So Bradley Burns, which is 1 percentage point of your 8.25% sales tax, which is your most significant local economic indicator. It represents 56.35% of your general fund revenue. You continue to have strong per capita sales tax at $425 per person in 2016. And Placerville was ranked number 37. It was our first time in the 30s out of 539 agencies. We hope to be number 1 someday. The quarter ended in September 2017. Receipts reported a 7.44% increase, or 87,624 in Placerville. Statewide, the receipts were up by 4.9, so our quarterly results surpassed the statewide average by quite a bit there. Looking regionally, within the Sacramento area, you can see that Placerville fared very well as El Dorado County, which El Dorado County overall, all agencies 7.88%, unincorporated 8.1%, South Lake Tahoe 7.76%, and Placerville 7.4%. Looking at the sources of your Bradley Burns sales tax, you can see that there's a variety of different categories: auto dealers and auto supplies, as well as your building materials and farm implements make up a pretty large portion, and that's important when you look at the next slide, which shows you the growth for the quarter ending September 30th by category. There's winners and losers. Apparel stores down by 5.94%. General merchandise, which is things like Dollar Tree, Big Lots, so on and so forth, that carry a variety of different merchandise, 9.01%. And then on over to building materials and farm implements, 4.17%. Auto dealers, 3.56%. Your county pool, 10.3. That's a lot of that is not all Amazon, but Amazon. Your internet sales, that's where the growth is there. State pool is very small, so it's not really worth mentioning. Looking at your categories, we appreciate all of our businesses in the city, especially our top 10. And this year's top 10, as of September 30th, are listed here. A few changes. The Thompson Auto, which is the GMC portion of the family, exceeded Chrysler. There, everybody's the same all the way down to looks like Hunt & Sons and Rayleigh's flip-flopped in position. In-N-Out Burger was out for a while. They're back in. Les Schwab, this is the first time I've seen them on the list.
That is a lot of hamburgers, man.
Yeah. So that's the list. There's also a top 20 list. Vice Mayor Acuna asked for the top 20, and there's a hard copy on the dais there for your reference. Looking at growth in your Bradley Burns sales tax, this has the 5-year growth. And you can see that kind of like our development, we had some years where we really knocked it out of the park, double-digit, high teens, and then it kind of got back down to regular growth. We are, this fiscal year, we only have one full quarter that we have all the details on. September, we just talked about. Looking through the fourth quarter of December 2017, we actually, for this analysis, we assume 5.2%. And I was disappointed to see our actual reported was 1.07. However, the devil's in the details. In talking to your auditors, HDL, your sales tax auditors, there were 2 adjustments, and one of your top 10 businesses, it appears there's a reporting issue. It looks like they either misreported it or underreported because it's significantly less. So if you take those 3 components and take them out of the mix, you actually end up with about a 4.48% compared to the 1.07%. So I think it was still a pretty good quarter, but we're still waiting for the final results, the details to that, and we'll share that with you at a later date when it's made available. But we did assume 5% growth, and that's what the state economists are forecasting statewide for the first quarter of 2018, and then 5.16% there in the, it's kind of the orange for the remainder of this fiscal year. The actual sales tax for fiscal year 16-17 totaled $4,614,719. Based on the assumptions we just talked about, we're assuming a forecast this fiscal year of $4,874,659, which is about $259,000 or 5.63% year-over-year growth, which is pretty good. Looking at your historical sales tax over the last 12 years, the red represents actual sales tax for that year, of each year. The blue indicates the each year adjusted by annual inflation, and the green is each year adjusted by cumulative inflation. And you can see that the amounts we're forecasting in fiscal year 17-18. When you compare cumulative inflation, though, that kind of takes us back to the 13-14 level. We've had in the last 12 years 32.67% in inflation. Moving on to your budget, you adopted your budget in June of this last year, totaled $19,114,112. Of that amount, $8,703 was your general fund budget. It included a $75,000 contingency, $65,000 in fund balance spending. So you actually adopted a budget with it looked like a deficit of 65,000, but you were using previous year's surpluses to do some projects. And looking at how the general fund is allocated, the adopted budget, 34 cents to police, 13 cents to development services, 34 cents to community services, 2 cents to the city council, city administration 9 cents, finance 4, and non-departmental, which is things like debt service and audit and LAFCO fees, those kind of things, 5 cents.
So we haven't increased our net worth. We're still only worth 2 cents.
You're very affordable. So, looking at your adopted budget compared to the forecast, your adopted budget assumed revenues of $8,637,000. We're forecasting slightly higher, $8,685,000, or a $47,000 increase, primarily sales tax and TOT and some of your franchise fees. Expenditures, unfortunately, a little higher, and we'll talk more about that, from $8.8 million to $8.9 million. Transfers net in actually declining $104,000. That's due to anticipated general liability claims. So I asked your city attorney to review all of your active general liability claims and what he feels how they will develop over the next 6 months, actually 4 months now. We feel to the general fund there's about $104,000 in exposure. So we're going to have to transfer that back to your general liability fund to cover those claims. We also had $66,000 in unforeseen debris cleanup that I know you're aware of near the creek, and that was also assumed here. That was unforeseen, and so you end up, instead of a $65,000 deficit, $180,000 deficit, which will be covered by your fund balance. Looking at your fund balance, so the blue represents revenues, the red indicates expenditures, and you can see that from fiscal year 11-12 to 15-16, you had some pretty sizable surpluses, which we're utilizing now for CIP projects and other things. Excuse me, but that also covers your claims that we'll need to fund this year. Looking at revenues by source, we talked about sales tax. All other taxes, that's property tax, business license tax, franchise fees, property transfer tax, up. We're actually forecasting $55,000 above budget. Construction permits, $11,000, actually slightly below, and that assumes that the hotel is not built this year. Now, if the hotels are not, the hotel permit fees are collected. If they're collected, that could be significantly higher, as Mr. Rivas indicated. Intergovernmental revenues, $49,000 higher. We did receive 50% of your vehicle license fee property tax, what we call VLF in lieu, and it's looking like overall it's going to have an effect of about $49,000 higher to your intergovernmental revenues. Charges for services, anything from plan check fees to planning and zoning to recreation fees, slightly less, $6,800. Fines and forfeitures, slightly less, $3,886. Use of money and property, slightly higher, a little over $2,000. Other financing sources, that's your overhead from your enterprise funds, as well as CIP cost recovery, slightly less, based on what we anticipate recovering this fiscal year. Looking at your expenditures, you can see by department the variances there. The police department, slightly higher due to overtime costs with vacant positions. Development services, $35,000, slightly higher due to the demand for additional contractual services for development projects. Community services, we talked about the debris cleanup. Actually, they were able to absorb most of that cost, all but $7,400 of that within their budget. And then you can see elected officials. You actually look like you're. It looks like you're coming in forecasted about $6,300 less than budget. City administration, $8,700 under budget. Finance, $6,600 under budget. And then non-departmental, that $131,000 over budget is primarily due to the $104,000 in anticipated claim costs that will come out of that portion of your budget. So again, about $162,000 over budget there. These assumptions assume pay-as-you-go costs for GASB 45 other employment benefits, or OPEB. That's your retiree health. We're paying today's premiums, but we're not setting aside anything for future retiree medical costs. We do assume expending the entire contingency of $75,000. You currently have a balance of about $40,000 in your contingency. Again, the deficit is primarily due to your planned use of $65,000 for CIP projects, the $104,000 in unforeseen general liability claims, and $66,000 for unforeseen debris cleanup. All right, Measure J, good news, sales tax, similar to Bradley Burns. We're anticipating $12,000 more in revenue than we forecasted. However, our expenses are about $45,000 higher. We're still exploring this. I was kind of surprised that they came out higher. So we're going to be evaluating that a little bit more to find out what's causing that. Sewer Enterprise Fund, good news. With the rate increase and water consumption is on the rise, which helps your sewer revenues. And so we're actually, we did not assume the rate increase in your sewer revenues. So with that and the increased water consumption, we're anticipating $215,000 more in revenues. We also had, let's see, no, that was it, okay. And then the budget, we actually assumed $432,000 coming from your reserve for rate stabilization reserve, excuse me. And due to the improved revenue streams, we're looking at only dipping into that reserve by $177,908. So good news there. Good news in water. Again, we did not assume the rate increase in your budget, and there's, because of increased water consumption, we anticipate, and also additional water connections, we anticipate $164,599 more revenue than anticipated, which will be set aside either in reserve or capital projects. There's plenty of needs there. Measure H, similar to Measure J, we're anticipating $12,000 more in revenue, which means $12,000 more for capital projects, for water sewer projects. Measure L, this is the first year for the entire year for Measure L. The forecast was rough, and we actually overestimated in our budget by $18,000. So if our forecast comes true, will actually be about $18,000 less than budget for Measure L this year. Downtown parking, I did place a detailed sheet on this. I know this is kind of truncated, but essentially what we're saying with downtown parking is that revenue we anticipate overall for all categories of exceeding budget by $5,890. Expenditures being below budget by $4,872, resulting in about $10,000 in additional net revenues, which can be used for capital projects. So if our forecast holds true, we'll have $40,000 for capital projects like restriping the parking structure and getting some improvements done to our parking lots, as well as $32,000 for your sinking fund for long-term capital replacement.
Okay. I think, could we just take a moment, and bask in those numbers just a moment? Okay, go.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's been many years where the bottom line has been negative or very small, very little or no money for capital replacement, and so this is the first time ever I've really felt good about our parking.
Dave,
fund.
and actually not actually this is serious. I didn't look at the detailed sheet. One of the risks you run is when you raise rates. And you what you hope for is at least a doubling of the money you pull in, because that means that everybody that was buying parking before is kind of still buying parking now, sort of big picture. And then fines and stuff, whatever else you're pulling in from that particular thing. How is that looking in terms of that? Because that's really is where, I mean, it's nice to have the overall number be higher than your expectations, because that means you didn't do damage to the system, but it would be, what's kind of the metadata? On that?
Metadata?
Yeah.
Just quickly, Dave,
Yeah.
Councilman, they're on the sheet.
Okay, so I should just look at that.
We can go through them, but
No,
on there.
nobody wants to do.
It shows what we forecasted and where you're at. On
Okay,
those
I'll look at the
based on
sheet.
budget.
So I just have a real quick question about the parking too. The $100,000 that we forfeited, or
Yes.
ate, so there was never a plan to pay that fund back.
No.
You forgave the loan.
We just forgave it and it's done
We're the
and gone.
nicest people around. Okay.
Good question about the revenue sources. The lease parking, we're forecasting $10,000 above budget. Daily parking, however, we're actually forecasting $30,000, almost $31,000 below budget. However, when we look at these forecasts, and perhaps we were a little hasty, we considered the revenues collected from January of 2017 to June 2017. Well, you may recall even before January to February or April, our parking stations were dying. Yeah, and we weren't collecting a whole lot of revenue, so the basis for the forecast is very weak.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that I believe now, after reconsidering the daily parking fee forecast, I believe it's actually going to be more like $10,000 to $15,000 below.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Anyway, and parking citations, good or bad, however you look at it, $25,000 above budget is what we're. And I'll look at that. Expenditures overall, $4,872 below budget. Okay, non-major funds. These are smaller funds that I just want to quickly comment on. Your gas tax fund, which it does include SB1. It includes $61,269 of SB1. We're anticipating $15,000 more overall in revenues compared to budget. SRO grant, the contract has been finalized, and the agreed amount is actually $4,000 higher than what we assumed in the budget, which is good news. Let's see, COPS. The 2014 on the bottom right-hand corner, this 2014 CHP COPS grant, this is paying for your police officer trainee this year. And I know in talking to the chief, the costs this year we're anticipating roughly $26,000. There's $50,000 to be had, and we're seeing if we can actually extract the entire $50,000. There's a matching component, so basically reducing our match so that we can extract the full $50,000 this year. So cross your fingers, we'll do our best to try to make that happen. Let's see here. Your Orchard Hill LMD, usually that has a deficit. We're forecasting $221 surplus. Don't fall out of your chair. Nothing else there, okay. Your equipment replacement fund, it kind of looks funny because we have $141,000 in expenditures. That was planned use of fund balance. The police department and the community services department has surplus many vehicles, and we've utilized the liquidation of those vehicles to buy new equipment, which is very creative. General liability, you can see that the expenditures and transfers in have increased by $161,000 because of claims to general fund, water, and sewer funds. And overall, you had a assumed surplus before capital projects of $2,019,833. Forecast is $2,313,825, or $293,992 greater before capital projects. In closing, the local economy has continued to improve, although we are seeing a slowdown in development slightly. The City Council and management continues to operate the city in a prudent and responsible manner. We anticipate year-end operating revenues to exceed operating expenditures for the most funds. And we plan on providing another update to the City Council on May 2nd at your budget workshop. And always remember, a budget is worth fighting for. A good budget is worth fighting for.
I like that. Very appropriate for March. Thank you so much, Dave. Sure appreciate the the look and the review of where we are, what we plan for, where we are, and helps us look forward to our budget season that is upon us. So thank you for the information on that. Any comments by council?
Briefly, I thought we would bask in the $2 million that Measure L raised. That was amazing. $2,100,000.
That we wouldn't have
That's true.
We would have never had.
That's right.
And I know it is, nobody's here, of course, but it's frustrating because we've had no winter and everybody thinks that we should have been out paving, but that industry is shut down. I mean, you just don't do it just because you have a freak. But we'll get it spent.
Well, you wouldn't want to be doing it today.
No, winter is playing.
Winter is coming.
Daylight savings time, and winter has arrived.
Yeah.
The other thing, I'd like to thank Dave for the time he took to make the top 20 list. This one, in my opinion, really does drill down. It gets us a little deeper in. The businesses, while Placerville Drive still continues to lead the charge, we do see businesses over on Broadway starting to pop up. So if it's at all possible, I would always appreciate that top 20 because we get a little bigger picture of what's going on. And tremendous effort by all these business operators.
We certainly appreciate their presence in our city.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dave.
Patty?
Just real quick, did you, and I couldn't see where you did it, but I know we had a lot of expense because of the damage, to our sewer plant and everything. Did you anticipate in here the reimbursement? Or maybe you couldn't because we weren't sure, but I understand we are getting some return now, so
Yeah.
how is it? Are we still showing a big debt for that, or?
We've received the initial debris removal.
I'm sorry?
The initial debris removal from the January and February storms. I want to say approximately $220,000 from Cal OES and FEMA for that. For the CIP projects, I don't believe we received anything yet. However, that's something we'll be pursuing.
But is that still showing as a debt, or it's not showing?
Those will be a receivable to if it's a water project to the Water Enterprise Fund, and then if it's a sewer project, Sewer Enterprise Fund. We did talk to the Measure H committee about the projects that are storm related, that we may have to use Measure H funds to cover the cash flow until we get reimbursed. So we do have a plan to cover that until we receive reimbursement, because it could be a year to year and a half before we get
I
the
know
money.
you said it's going to take
Yeah.
quite a while, but
So far
and I
it's
just
been
wondered
quicker,
how it was.
But yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No? Does any member of the public wish to comment on this file? Come on down, Ted.
Hey, good evening again. Theodore Jewis, City of Placerville, again. I think that the city is underestimating the tax base available for a transient occupancy tax. I was just down at the Board of Supervisors this afternoon, and they're discussing raising the TOT countywide from 10% to 12%. But for the life of them, they can't figure out how to allocate that money. But that's their problem. No, Placerville and South Lake Tahoe, the only incorporated cities in the entire county, we can set our own TOT, and the county's rules don't apply. South Lake Tahoe's TOT is high, as you could imagine, given they have a lot of tourism. We don't have very many rooms for rent in Placerville, but I think that's a good thing, because that to me implies scarcity, which means it ought to be more expensive for somebody from out of town. So I don't think you'd have any trouble selling a tax to the public that's taken from people who come here to visit. And it's like very easy, very, very easy thing to do. And if we don't have that many rooms and they are booked up, yeah, it should be more expensive. And if the city can get some of that money, then all the better. I don't know what our TOT rate is right now, but outside of the city, it's 10% in the rest of the county. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate it. Any other comments? So, Dave, what is our TOT?
10%.
10%. Yeah, I thought so. All right. Well, thank you for your comments. All right. Request just to receive and file this report. Do we need a motion on this?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you so much for all your work on this. And before we go on to council reports, I was in error. Commander Wren, I wanted to acknowledge your presence here tonight for filling in for Chief Ortega. It's always good to see you, and thank you for sitting with us on this rainy Tuesday night. We appreciate you being here.
Yep.
All right. Council reports. El Dorado County Transit. Vice Mayor Cunha, Councilmember Borelli. Anything?
I don't think there was anything outstanding that to report on. We did have a meeting.
Okay.
All
right, and what about transportation? Councilmember Borelli or Clarici? I was not there. Oh, that's right. You were not there. There was nothing significant.
I was there.
Yeah. Nothing to
I mean, again, they gave us a great report and update, and I am the board's has graciously let me be the representative for CalCog, and I will be attending the conference in Monterey.
We appreciate you representing us. LAFCO, Vice Mayor Cunha.
We had a busy meeting. We actually had a 3-hour LAFCO meeting. Yep.
Wow.
We actually had some, no, there was a lot of public comment. We were busy LAFCOing. We actually did a project down at Cameron Park many years. You know, when you go to, there was down there in the Cameron Estates. Yep. We annexed into that zone, and those people are probably 6 or 7 years into that project.
Wow.
So they were very happy with the outcome.
Great. Excellent. Good news. SAGHOG. All right, and nothing on the 2x2. All right. Any requests for future agenda items? All right.
Just to continue the mural project.
Sounds good. 15.1, receive and file a quarterly report from El Dorado County Fire. Mr. Morris.
No real
Okay.
additions to that. You have the report. Any questions? Fire is not here, but I can get those back to him, get answers for you. So minimal.
Yeah. Any questions? All right.
I still have a request.
What's that?
I have asked for a long time. I really, really would like a report on their, I guess they have, the fire department has it, on any kind of preparation for evacuation, et cetera, et cetera. And I asked for this a long time ago, especially when I came back after hearing the Orville Dam fiasco, and the folks there, the thing that they left us with was don't expect that everything's going to run smoothly, and make sure that you all know what your city's plans are for evacuation in case of any emergency, whether it be fire, floods, whatever. And I still would like to see us really work on that.
Can I comment real quickly on that? We are putting together a mock plan,
Great.
or a mock event, I should say.
Oh, great.
That we will, and you will be asked to participate in that. We're looking, the chief is working on that. Probably June. Oh, yes, well, yeah.
Not in an emergency, Mark.
Because you don't want to have a disaster unless you've got some food to go with it. Yes.
In that event, you look at your logistics person is usually in charge of food, and that is Steve Yule is usually.
We're in good shape then.
Good shape.
I think that's fantastic.
We let 'em-
because,
I really would
the
appreciate
disasters
On
this
a
last year
serious
did
note.
heighten the awareness for all the communities, and we would not know what to do in that. So
Right.
really appreciate everyone's efforts on that.
Going
Look
back
forward to that.
future council agenda item requests, I kind of fight this every year, but the time is coming. The defensible space, if we could have something along about maybe the end of April, which is
to
almost,
get the word out. You know,
it's too late, but yeah, because it's going to be, who knows? Look what happened last year.
Yep.
And there's always just those few troubled properties in town that the fire department has to go out, Mr. Rivas's department has to get involved, and we really need to, it would be nice to have county fire come in. Maybe just do a little defensible states, yeah, as well as what you have planned.
Okay, great. All right. Receive and file animal control reports. I know we had asked for that. Any other comments on that?
I'd like to see roosters to identify specific subspecies.
Do we have any, no, really, that was an issue. Do we have any updates? Not for now. Should we just call animal control and find out if anything's happened up
Call
at
Susan
Lumsden?
Zito.
That's true,
I
she
think
would.
Cleve has some report.
Okay.
I've been in contact with Henry Brzezinski at Animal Control, and it looked like it had been good for a while until just about a week ago. I went up there and observed 2 roosters at Lumsden Park.
I think they're living with the geese, really.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Because when I was up there, they were
associates.
all amongst the geese.
They figured out how to hide.
But you had a conversation with Henry, didn't
I
you?
did
Camouflage.
report it, and Henry said they would look into it and see if they could capture them.
Thank you. On a very serious note, very serious note, I like this report that we did get from Animal Control.
Yes.
The Animal Control it gives us a lot of information. It's on just a couple of pages, and it gives us for 3 months all the activity, good and bad, the wildlife issues that they have to deal with, and a lot of that stuff our police department used to have to deal with. So,
It's quite a bit now.
I
All right.
appreciate it.
Any member of the public wish to comment on any of these reports? All right. So with that, we have upcoming items scheduled for the next regularly scheduled meeting is the Continuum of Care presentation, Water Agency Storm Report, County Community Hubs, Upper Broadway Bike Lanes Transit Authority Agreement, proclamation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, PPOAs and MOUs, Measure J report, Reserve Police Officer approval, Green Valley Road Pavement Rehabilitation, Placerville Drive, Kraken Slurry Seal. Somewhere in there. And with that,
Mayor,
Yes.
just quickly, just
Did I
one
miss
of those.
Did I miss one?
No, I just want to mention one of those, the community hubs, we're probably going to push back.
Oh, that's
because
right.
We already have 2 presentations
Yeah,
on this
one at
meeting,
a
and
time.
I don't think that's urgent. Did we hear that one?
No.
Is that
It isn't
already-
urgent, but I really would like folks
Yeah.
to hear about it. 'cause
Yeah,
it was-
we
it's-
definitely want to
okay,
bring it
great.
back to you, but we didn't, we thought 2 presentations was enough. and
We
didn't wanna
appreciate that.
overburden it with it.
So we can both give them the time that they're due.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Right.
on our attention. Okay, so with that, thank you for being with us tonight. We'll see you on March 27th.
Steve.